reveille.
Look at us now.
Ooh, Jesus.
It's what, 11 a.m.?
Combat.
Oh,
Whoa.
You fit in seamlessly in this weird MK environment.
Do you want a margarita?
We're gonna do it. On your marks, get set, and go down.
Oh, there's no place I'd rather be. Well, that's not quite true. I wouldn't mind being drunk in the middle of nowhere. But short of that, there's no place I'd rather be today than right here, previewing this weekend's huge upcoming UFC fights. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Morning Kombat. My name is Luke Thomas, but this time I am merely one half of your hosting duo. I do not join you from the capital of Estados Unidos in Washington, D.C. I am elsewhere. Speaking of International Fight Week, I'm international, but of course I am joined by my good friend, brethren, Miami's own unofficial mayor. It's Danny Segura. Hi, Danny. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, and I got to be a little bit more corrupt to be able to hold that title. But yes, yeah, man, excited to be here. Excited to talk some fights, man. I feel like it's been a while since we've had a big field fight. Obviously, we did have the White House one, but you know that was kind of like its own thing. But in terms of like regular fights, this is a big one, man, and I'm excited to talk about it here with you.
Yeah, like you said, a full fight card, and I think there's probably fair to say, I'd say maybe like a couple of fights on this fight card that are like whatever to me. But for a full International Fight Week card, it is very difficult, in my opinion, to complain about the fight quality. There might be other things to complain about, that this is a sexual assault to a Super Bowl, but that's just MMA in 2026. All right. Thumbs up here on the video. Hit subscribe if you haven't. Let's see. You can, Danny, let me ask you, where do you prefer a follow, Twitter or IG?
Bro, we've been through this. IG is king, man. Is king. Twitter's fine, I guess, but IG's where is that? I mean, you get all the reels I sent you from fucked up shit that I see happening in Latin America. IG's where is that? It's awesome. I guess TikTok's kind of cool. I'm starting to get into it a little bit, but no, IG's king in my opinion.
You know what? TikTok's algorithm is better. It serves up, well, at least it has been. I don't know. I haven't used it a whole lot recently, but historically, it's been a little bit better about serving up the kind of content you want. So either way, you can follow Danny there. We also have memberships on the channel. Of course, you can get emojis, badges, and more to come. It helps support the channel. We really appreciate that if you would like to do that. And morningkombat@gmail.com is a place to reach the show. Now, before we continue else, let me just bring – oh, you know what? Yeah, let's bring him in. Third member of the show here. He is our producer extraordinaire. Whether he is sober is an unknowable question, but I know he's ready for this weekend's fights. And I know he's ready to tell his girlfriend, I'll see you a different day. It's Long Island Luke. What's up, buddy?
It's McGregor fight week, babe. We got to go. Nah, yeah. I mean, she knows. I've been warning her all week. You know, I have W's coming up, but I'm pretty excited, guys. This is actually like a really fun card. It's not just a McGregor card. Not that I think anyone's too excited about that today anyway, but you know what I mean. I'm excited. Looking forward to the fights. Can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, well, that's just it, Danny. Usually a McGregor card, I don't know if usually is quite the right word, but often, let's say, a McGregor card, it's just kind of him and then whatever after the fact. This time, there actually is depth. So it's something of a somewhat unusual McGregor pairing with that depth. With that in mind, and we're going to get to all of these, non-main event edition, favorite fight on the card?
Ooh.
Just a personal one.
That's a tough one. I got so many fights that I like here, but how can you not go with King Green versus Terrence McKinney? Like that to me is just maybe 2-3 minutes of pure violence and somebody getting slept. So I'm all for that.
Danny, I have to say, I forgot to mention, you are from MMA Junkie, who won. I don't know how many times MMA Junkie has won this, but you guys won, I think, Media Source of the Year. I know that those are hard to win. So congratulations to you and the whole team over there.
Thank you. Yeah. It's we got a great team over there. I think we do a pretty good job at covering the sport, and it's nice to get some recognition, man. I said it on Twitter. Sometimes working for MMA media is a bit thankless. You know, we work a lot of weekends, long hours, and it's nice to get some recognition. So shouts out to the fans who made that possible, and shouts out to the entire team. Yeah, we got an awesome squad out there.
Can I ask who else was nominated?
MMA Junkie, that's all that matters, baby. No, but I think MMA Fighting, ESPN. Now, I'm not sure who else, but I'm sure there were other names as well.
Yeah.
Shouts out to them as well.
Yeah, very good, very good. All right, so congratulations to all the good folks there. We've had many MMA Junkie, either current staff or alumni here on the show. So congratulations to all those folks. Let's do this. Let's remind people about some merch, special merch opportunity this month. So all the t-shirt designs have been re-released, and we're going to take 20% off the top. This includes the basketball designs, Duncan, Army of Donkness, Crown, MKTV, you name it. It's all available, 20% off all month long. And in addition, we're going to take 50% off of all posters. And of course, as I forgot to mention, we're not doing fan subs today, but for fan subs, you get a free signed poster for the best one all month. And of course, those can go to morningkombat@gmail.com. But here we go, morningkombat.shop for da merch. I'm trying to think of anything else to set up ahead of time. I think that's about it. So today's show, no fan subs, no dead wrongs, which, we try to do more on Fridays. Today, we're just going to do the fights. We're just going to talk about UFC 329, nothing else in the sport. I will say one of the dumber stories, Danny, that I've been following while on vacation is that they were going to do Joshua Fury not in the UK. They were going to put it in Las Vegas. Now they want to put it back in the UK, but they want to put it at a time where it's like the evening time for the United States to have a 2 a.m. ring walk in London. And I just have to say, as an American, I don't want that. You know what I mean? I understand why they're doing it, because they're trying to maximize viewership, at least stateside. But dude, if it's a British thing, let it be a British thing. And it can be worldwide. The world will tune in. It's like the World Cup, Danny. People, they will find a way to tune in if it's big enough. I hate the idea of a 2 a.m. Fury Joshua ring walk. I know it's not UFC 329, but I had to get it off my chest.
No, I 100% agree. It's like watching a movie in its original language. You got to put subtitles on it. You can't just put, the dubbed translation there. It's just, unless it's Shrek. Shrek in Spanish is quite good. But outside of that, man,
Shrek in Spanish,
you got to consume stuff in its original form. So, yeah, no, put it at an appropriate time over in the UK. It's the biggest boxing fight in UK history, would you say?
Ooh, I'm not good enough to know, but I mean, it has to be.
And at least in terms of magnitude, maybe not so much in importance, obviously, because I don't think there's any belts on the line, right? But maybe the WBC humanitarian belt will be on the line. Who knows? But outside of that, in terms of
FIFA
magnitude,
Peace Prize,
huge, bro.
Yeah. By the way, before I have to ask you, now that our beloved Colombia is out, of course, U.S. men's national team had no chance to begin with. Who's going to win the World Cup now?
France, bro.
Yeah, dude, they're tough.
France is stacked.
Their bench guys come off the bench, and it's like that guy's like a fucking star in Europe.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's disgusting. France is disgusting. I would say Spain has a good shot. Spain also has a pretty deep bench, but I feel like Yamal has been kind of a little bit muted. Yeah. Oyarzabal has been killing it, but he's not him. He's very good. But dude, Mbappe has just been ripping it. I would like to say though, I'm rooting for, now that I don't have any horse in the race, I'm rooting for Haaland, bro, in Norway. I kind of want them to pull it off, dude. I like Haaland. He's such a troll. Very cool dude. That's a good team as well. I don't want to see Argentina win it. I love my Argentinians, but they already won it. I want to see a new team win it. So, go Haaland, man, and go Norway.
Let me tell this story, so then we'll start the show. So I took my kid we paid for like a day pass at, we're not staying at it, but we paid for a day pass because they have a bunch of pools at a nearby resort. And we took our kid there. And the reason why we took our kid there is because she wanted to go to the pool. They had slides and stuff. And they also had an auditorium to watch the game. So we're like, oh, perfect. We'll take her there. We'll take a break in the middle of the day to watch it. It was a 3 p.m. local time game. This will be great. And they had a whole place to show it. But before the game was obviously Argentina versus Egypt. And I naively was sitting
Egypt
there
versus FIFA? But
Egypt versus FIFA. But I'm sitting there, just by the pool with my daughter, and the auditorium's like right over here. And I hear this like loud commotion, and I hear goal, goal, goal. And I'm like, oh, Argentina must have scored, because people were like high-fiving and celebrating. And then the security guy comes down. I'm like, oh, who scored for Argentina? He goes, no. Egypt scored, bro. They were high-fiving over Egypt, dunking on Argentina here. People were not sized for Argentina at all. I don't know why I was surprised to see that, but I was kind of surprised to see that.
Well, I mean, I was rooting for Egypt too. And again, I love my Argentinians. I got a lot of Argentinians friends, but we were supposed to play this Saturday the winner of Egypt versus Argentina, right? We would have gotten passed by Switzerland, and I say we as in Colombia. And who would you rather face, Messi and FIFA or Egypt? I'll pick Egypt any day. So, yeah, people were just kind of rooting for like the easier team per se. But yeah, man, they almost got it done. Shouts out to Egypt. Great effort. That was an amazing game.
Yeah, for sure. All right. But speaking of international events, let's talk about International Fight Week. UFC 329 is now just a couple of days away. Let's start with that main event. Conor McGregor returns, and we all know the story at this point. He's been off for basically 5 years. Not only that, he's had all kinds of outside of the cage issues. Not only that, he left on a broken leg. Not only that, he left on a loss. And before that, he hadn't won since basically 6.5, almost 7 years ago. But it is finally here, the rematch between Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway. Before we talk about the individual fight itself, Danny, you're locked in on this. Again, I've been trying to pay attention. I'm a little bit further out because of vacation, but let's talk about the hype for this one. Does this one feel like a traditional Conor McGregor fight? And if not, why?
It does not. It does not, and I think there are multiple factors for that. One, you're not getting a traditional Conor McGregor. A traditional Conor McGregor is a Conor McGregor winning, a Conor McGregor knocking people out, active, taking fights on short notice, calling his shots, Mystic Mac. That was the traditional McGregor. We're getting a McGregor here that is in his late 30s, closer to 40 than he is to 30. He hasn't fought in 5 years, surrounded by controversy, and entering a media landscape that is very divided. This is not the time when he was fighting where he would go on Jimmy Fallon and it would be like the biggest news and clips everywhere. Now there's so much content being generated that gets forgotten pretty quick. And you really have to make a big statement in order to step into the pop culture, right? And I feel like McGregor has yet to do that. Like, people know he's fighting, but it hasn't really been a big of a deal as previous times. And then on top of that, bro, we just talked about it, the World Cup. And I know the UFC, and maybe not so much the UFC, but Dana White constantly underestimates the power and the magnitude of soccer, or football, I should say. And I'll call it soccer moving on just because, it'll be easier, but it's football. Dude, like, the World Cup is massive. It's the biggest event in sports, period. And that takes over everything. So no matter what you do, it will be dwarfed by the World Cup. And guess what? The UFC on Saturday is going up against the World Cup. And not only the World Cup, but Argentina and Messi, who is the biggest sports star in sports history, period. So, yeah, it does feel a little bit different. I do wonder about the impact of it in terms of viewership and stuff, but it's still big. I'm still excited. But, yes, it's not your traditional Conor McGregor fight week by a long shot.
How much would you say, and again, we don't have to relitigate the case, it happened and we covered it. I think McGregor's a dirtbag, but I realize a lot of MMA fans either don't agree or don't care. I'm not here to relitigate that particular part, but I guess what I would ask is, to what extent do you feel like the outside the cage issues, and again, it's more than just like, oh, he had problems with like law enforcement, the absence itself, how much are the questions dogging him? Because I want to ask it this way. I have noticed, dude, like, there is still great enthusiasm. Like, some of the numbers he's putting up, I think his interview with Ariel, it did like millions of views. And so on the one hand, it's like, yes, the absence creates questions, the injury creates questions, the conduct outside of the cage creates questions. But how much material impact is that having? And this is a debate we had on the show, Danny, which was, which one's going to do more viewership, Conor McGregor or the White House card, at least on Paramount Plus? I'm of the belief that, like, despite these questions, I actually still think they could do a real record number here. What do you feel about, like, what these are these questions again, maybe not so much the court case, but are these questions about being outside and being gone, are they buoying interest or are they depressing interest?
I think they are generating tons of interest for the hardcores and people that generally tune in, because you generally want to see what happens. Like, there's so many questions that are out there that you want answers for. And the only way to get answers for them is, to watch these interviews, to watch the media day, to watch all fight week, to watch the fight itself, what is said after the fight as well. And on that point, I would say it's very interesting, which is why I'm excited about this fight week. But in terms of like the casual interest, I do think like the absence, has kind of muted a little bit McGregor's star power. And then all the outside issues, like I've seen little clips and reels on Instagram pop up on kind of like man on the street asking people about McGregor. I've seen multiples across, various years, throughout this absence. And over in Ireland, like they don't have a high view of McGregor. In fact, quite the opposite. And I feel like that's a lot of fans, right? Like it's hard to be a fan of his. If you watched his rise in MMA, man, I'll admit it. I was a big fan of what he was doing. His style was elegant. He was also a violent finisher. But then you had all this other stuff, and you always want to kind of separate the art from the artist, but sometimes it gets difficult, right? Especially when things are so current. So yeah, it's a tough one. But I would say all that is definitely impacting his star power. And I think it's one of the reasons why also the UFC probably didn't offer him a contract extension, and they're kind of just wait and see what he has to offer in terms of star power in 2026.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was going to say too, like, one thing that we were accustomed to, if you've ever been to, I remember I was at UFC 205 where he beat Eddie Alvarez in New York City in that mega card. One of the examples of a Conor card being actually really good. Obviously the Cerrone card would not be that way. And dude, were you there that night? I don't recall if you were in New York City that night.
I was in New York City, but I was in my apartment. I was not at the event.
So, dude, I remember when we got out, I walked out of, I did my post-fight show, and then I walked out of MSG, and all of 7th Avenue was shut down because of the Irish.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't know exactly what's going to happen this time. Obviously, it's not New York City, it's in Las Vegas. I don't mean that. But what I'm saying is, the Irish have turned on him. And so it does feel like we're in a different chapter, but the celebrity is still so significant that, I guess I'll be really curious to see, not that are we going to do a big gate? Of course. Is it going to do a big viewership number, whether it sets the record? Of course. But just how big it is. I actually think this is a really, really big, important moment to really gauge exactly what Conor McGregor's celebrity looks like in material terms in the present day.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
Now, with that in mind, we're going to talk about Max Holloway in a second and the matchup in particular. Actually, you know what? No, let's do that now because I was going to do something else in a minute. Let's sort of do that now. Max Holloway, to me, has been in a really kind of strange position, Danny, because UFC 300, right? He was expected. Do you remember the narrative at UFC 300 where it was like, oh, man. And I can't sit here and say that I was above it, where it was like, oh, dude, Justin's going to beat the shit out of this guy. This is going to be so bad. Maybe he'll survive, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes in there and face plants him. And you're like, wow, it's unbelievable. And he tries to go back to 45 and fight Ilya and then gets waxed. He comes back to 55. And more recently, we obviously saw what happened against Charles Oliveira, where he didn't get beat up, but he got dominated. And I don't know what people are making of Max. What is the story of Max Holloway as we enter Saturday's fight?
I think it'll only be decided on Saturday. And that's the thing about like Max Holloway's career. Like just when you think he's done, he finds a way to reinvent himself in the sport and have big fights and have meaningful fights too. Look, we can take it even further back than the Gaethje. And I agree with you. Like going into that Gaethje fight, much of my thinking was concerned for Max Holloway. Like, oh, this is not good for him. Like, we love this guy. He's awesome, but this is a bad call. And, we were concerned for his health and honestly for his safety. But those concerns in terms of like his career coming to an end, in a way have been present for a while. And then, as I said, he always finds a way to reinvent himself. Remember what the narrative was after he lost twice to Volkanovski, or what is it? 3 times to Volkanovski.
3 times, yeah.
He was done. Like, what is he going to do? Like, he's just going to wander around and, get some fights here and there. But somehow he manages to be relevant, right? The whole BMF thing, moving up, getting some big fights as well, still at 45. And now he's getting the biggest fight in the sport, which is obviously Conor McGregor. And he feels like he's kind of in no man's land right now because, dude, literally, he kind of feels displaced a little bit. The guy was at 45 not that long ago, fought at 155. Now all of a sudden he's at 170. Like, where exactly is he standing? Like, what exactly is his path? But, man, I'll tell you this. With a Conor McGregor win in hand, especially if it's a finish, he's going to have options that are going to open up in ways that we might not really fully grasp right now. Again, think about that UFC 300 moment, that iconic, like pointing down, getting the knockout. Like at that point, he was on top of the world, and we didn't even think that was going to be a thing. So I've counted out Max Holloway multiple times in terms of like what he can do in a career. If he were to stop Conor, again, I think sky's the limit, and I think there will be a lot of options, even not ruling out a rematch with Justin Gaethje for the title.
Long Island, do me a favor. Tell me, you don't have to answer right now, but if you could look this up, in the last few fights, so like the Poirier fight or the Ilya fight, maybe not so much the Ilya fight, but look at the last 5. How many of them, in terms of the odds, went the opposite of the way in which the bout result went? So, like, if in other words, if Holloway was an underdog, he won, or if he was a favorite, he lost. What does that look like?
So last 5, we're going Korean Zombie. He was definitely a favorite going into that.
That's an easy one, yeah.
Gaethje, he was an underdog, I think, like plus 200. Ilya, he was definitely an underdog.
Okay.
Dustin, he was definitely a favorite. And Charles, he was.
How much of a favorite was he over Dustin?
Probably a hefty one, like -2 or -300 something.
Okay.
And then Charles, he was roughly the same, -2, -3 something, and he obviously lost that fight. So
part of the intrigue for this fight for me, Danny, on just pure fight terms is, everyone's kind of saying, oh, there's huge questions about Conor. And obviously the questions about Conor are bigger and more significant, and there's just more of them. But the kind of funny part to me about Max Holloway is I haven't got a steady beat on him either. Yeah. There's been times where, yes, he's overmatched a guy, or he was in, a little bit outgunned, and you can kind of do it. But like, I didn't see that BMF fight going that way. I thought his takedown defense would be sturdier, should he even need it. I kind of feel like the intrigue in this fight, Danny, is you got this big soup with a bunch of ingredients, and I just am not sure how it's going to taste. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that too. And one of the reasons why I think McGregor is kind of a live dog here, and I know it sounds crazy, but dude, like, Holloway didn't look great at all against Oliveira. He looked flat. He looked helpless out there in the grappling, and he just didn't have an answer to a fight where I think in years prior, maybe he doesn't win, but at least he gives it different looks. It was the same repeated look over and over. And something that has always stood out about Holloway is that he always finds a way and do adjustments in real time, right? And that was kind of absent in that fight. So I kind of do wonder as well, as the road has to end at some point for everybody. Again, is it the end for Holloway in terms of like his skills and being an elite level fighter? I don't know. But again, I've thought about this multiple times before in other fights, and yet again, he finds a way to surpass that. But there's a lot of questions around on Max Holloway as well. Also, this is at 172. I feel like that's not emphasized enough.
We're going to talk about
look
that,
at 170.
Yeah. Let me ask this. I think Holloway talking to either maybe Okamoto or Mike Braun, and he said, hey, listen, or maybe it was our own Brian Campbell. And he said, hey, listen, everyone's saying if Conor wins, he gets maybe Makhachev, maybe he gets Gaethje. And I want to say, this is Max Holloway talking, if I win, I want to be in those conversations. I want to be in the Gaethje conversation. I want to be in the Makhachev sweepstakes. Now, I think the Makhachev sweepstakes are a bit too far, but the core of what Max is saying is if you're offering that up for Conor, you should be offering up that for me. To what extent, not merely is that a fair request, but would the UFC honor that? Again, the Makhachev one, I just really think is too far. But what about Gaethje? Does he get a Gaethje title shot rematch if he beats Conor here?
I think he could. I mean, what would it be a bigger fight? Arman Sarukian and Gaethje, or Gaethje and Oliveira? Like, probably Holloway is still the bigger fight, especially with that UFC 300 moment. I'm telling you, that thing went so viral and was so iconic. If he's able to do something similar and get on the mic and be like, hey, you're walking around with the 55 belt, but not so long ago, I knocked your ass out. Let's run it back, Gaethje. Dude, people would be up for it. And also, it was an awesome fight. So, I really do think a title shot is in play here. I do think it all depends how he wins as well. The delivery of the post-fight interview, he almost has to convince the UFC in that manner. But he's given a stage where he has the ability to do that. So let's wait and see. But a title shot, I think, is definitely a 155 in play for Max Holloway here, even though that sounds a little crazy, keeping in mind that Arman Sarukian has been waiting on the wings forever. But I would love to see him get a title shot, speaking about Arman Tsarukyan, but I don't think the UFC is too keen on that.
How has Conor looked to you during fight week? I mean, we haven't had the presser, which to me it seems to be one of the more pivotal moments to get this kind of information. But based on what we've seen, what have you seen?
I think it's positive. If you remember when he was going to fight Khabib, like his whole fight week was erratic, and you could tell he was like not in a good space. And then you go, okay, there might be a little bit of trouble there for him. And obviously stylistically, there were other issues as well. But here I generally do believe him when he's kind of toned down the partying. I do think he's probably been disciplined for this training camp. He looks fully aware of the situation. Yeah, he'll say some stuff here and there that you think it's a little crazy, like, oh, I'm the GOAT and I'm the GOAT featherweight and all that. Obviously, that's all bullshit, not true. But in other ways, he has a good grasp of reality and saying like, hey, look, it's okay for people to doubt me. And I understand it. Like my partying, my lifestyle, the layoff, the injury, like he's very aware of the reality here with Max Holloway. And even like he'll obviously play him down and say he'll sun him and all this, but he's also said like, this is also a colossal challenge for me. So I like what I've seen from McGregor. Again, I don't know if it's enough for me to pick him to win this fight, but all in all, if I want to give him the best chance possible, I do think he's ticking the boxes in terms of, being prepared, being aware of the challenge, respecting Max Holloway, and treating this like a proper fight.
I'll say this. To me, the biggest thing that I've noticed, and maybe I've missed it, but I don't think so, he hasn't dunked on Dustin Poirier one time for his drunken arrest. That is something that I feel like, if he was in that same mind space, to your point, at that Radio City Music Hall press conference with Khabib, where they had no fans, the whole thing was weird. I think he would have brought it up 1,000 times, and he didn't bring it up. Now, maybe he will at the press conference today, maybe he will after the fight or something. But the fact that he hasn't done it to this point, we're now like, what, a week since it happened, almost 2 or whatever it's been. I think that actually speaks to a guy who's kind of locked in, because the thing is this, Danny, like, John Kavanagh's out there saying like, oh, he's super dialed in. I'm not saying that that's not true. You know what I mean? But I'm not taking your coach's word for it. Like, and that's going to be true of almost any fighter.
He said that at every single fight, and there were some fights that you could tell he didn't. Really
It's like, I'm not
sorry, John, but
no, I don't believe that. Or I mean, at least at a bare minimum, I'm not going to accept it at face value. Mm-hmm. But the fact that yes, he does say crazy shit in some interviews, but that's he's kind of just like I don't know. It's almost like doing jazz, or you're just improvising and saying just playing notes. Sort of the way I would describe that. That's very different than like, ooh, I'm gonna sink my teeth into my rival who got the last win over my, the last fight that we had was with that guy. He didn't say anything about it, and I thought that was like, I don't know if he's dialed in, but that to me surprised me. And I think if anything does kind of signal that he's dialed in, the fact that he's not lashing out at the world, at least not right now, maybe there is something to this.
Yeah,
that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and that's something that stood out. Like when he was in his prime, like he would talk a lot of shit, but it was never really personal. Like he would talk his shit, but it was personal without personal, and he didn't seem bitter towards the game and life, right? And then around the McGregor fight, like the Khabib fight, that's when he started getting a lot darker, right? And his trash talk started getting darker, and it just felt like there was a different motive behind it. And I agree with you. I think with some of the things he's shown in his trash talk here, which by the way, it's great, he's the best at it. It shows there's definitely some distance from it, and yeah, he just doesn't seem as bitter. Say whether religion costs that or whatever it is, you can believe whatever you want, but I do think whatever it is working. I do feel like he's distanced himself from it, and he seems at a healthy place.
I wonder if it's the Goldilocks method, right? So if you recall, when he went into the Cerrone fight, he was trying to be like, maybe it was it was the Poirier rematch. So now this is 2021, where he was trying to be like elder statesman, where he was trying to be like, hey, Dustin's going to give me hot sauce and we're going to shake hands. We're just going to have a good fight. And then it didn't go that way. And then, it wasn't.
I think it was both. I think he had that attitude for the Cerrone and for the Poirier.
Right.
I think
the second Poirier, he was definitely buddy, and then the third Poirier was when he switched back.
So this is what I mean. He's gone from being like elder statesman, where he didn't have enough fire, to then being like, oh, your wife's in my DMs. And then it just, again, his leg broke. So who's to say exactly how that would have gone? But I don't know. To your point, it seemed dark. And now he seems to be something approximating a little bit more of a middle ground. Whereas getting back to Max Holloway, Max just seems like Max. You know what I mean? He doesn't get too much up, doesn't get too much down. He's always got a couple of one-liners. He's calling himself Mystic Max, right? So there's a little bit of that going on. But Conor, to me, feels like he's trying to calibrate something, at least in my mind, a little bit more thoughtfully than the last few appearances that we've seen from him. I guess that's the way I would put it.
Yeah, I agree. He seems a little bit more chill. And again, more focused on the more focused on the task at hand here.
All right, let's talk about the fight itself. And you mentioned 170. I would actually like to start there. First, look at the tail of the tape here. You can see their records, obviously both highly experienced. Conor McGregor is going to be 38, by the way, at the end of this month. So that 37 is somewhat misleading, although I'm not sure when Max's birthday is. They both got a bunch. Again, these guys have both got pretty exemplary records, all things being what they are. But the thing at 170, Danny, I would like to start there, which is that I hate this fight being at 170. And by the way, there was a new New York Times report. I don't know if you guys saw it, where they said not only did Conor, this is what they reported. So I'm merely sharing the details. They said that not only did he use PEDs to recover, including human growth hormone and pure anabolic steroids, which again, I want to be clear, to recover from an injury, I don't have, especially one that severe, I have no issue with. But then they report that he used it for a while after that. So now he is like bulked up essentially to 170 pounds. There's no doubt in my mind, Danny, that on some level that is clearly going to benefit Conor much more than it's going to benefit Max. Max might walk around close to 170 or maybe even 180 or perhaps even a little bit higher. But we talked about this with Cyril Gane and Poatan at the White House card. Everyone's saying, oh, it's Poatan's walking around weight. That has nothing to do with whether or not that's your optimal weight. So let me ask the question this way. What are the advantages it confers for both guys potentially? And what are the disadvantages it confers for both guys? Let's start on the McGregor side. Advantages, disadvantages, 170.
Advantages. He's going to be able to take more damage, just having a bigger frame, not cutting all the way down. He's going to have a bigger frame, just more mass in order to take damage. I think his damage threshold will go up, which is something that in the past has cost him, right? Especially in those Poirier fights. Not only is it physically tough for him, but mentally, I think that's a fighter that doesn't really enjoy and doesn't really thrive in war. So that's one. I think he'll be tougher and more affordable at 170. 2, he's got an experience advantage over Max at 170. He's 2-0. The Cerrone fight and a Diaz fight, right? And I know those were 55ers, essentially moving up with him, but still, he has experience moving his frame in the octagon at 170 pounds. Or heavier, obviously, because he's going to bounce back from the weight. And I think that is big. That is big. Max Holloway has no idea how his body is going to feel in the octagon on Saturday night. He has no idea. So far, he's done it at 45, 55, but 70 is a different beast. I think his power will carry on. I think we've seen it. I think he can crack at 170. At 155, maybe a little bit of his power will be diminished. And also his gas tank. I think he'll have a bigger gas tank at 170. The cuts were really destroying him and really zapping his gas tank. I still think Max will have a cardio advantage, but the gas tank will be better for him at 170 than 55. So I think those three: resistance, cardio, power, and experience will be in favor of McGregor at 170. The negatives, I don't really see a negative, to be honest, for McGregor. And there's a reason why he asked for this fight to be at 170.
All right, let me push back on that. So power, I agree with. Certainly experience, no question about it. The cardio part, though, I would challenge that. So
you think his cardio will be better at 55 than 170?
So I think so the way I would see it is this, Danny. To me, the argument that you're making for most of the time, I'd almost certainly agree with, which is that, hey, if this guy is cutting less weight, particularly whatever his natural point is now, it's going to be higher than what it was in, I don't know, 2017 or whatever, right?
Sure.
I would normally agree with that, but I think I see it slightly differently now, which is that the McGregor who was able to control his life such that he was able to keep himself close to 55 fighting shape. Yes, that weight cut was a little bit more significant, but the 360 life discipline that came with it, to me, conferred more athletic benefits rather than you've just gotten bigger. And yeah, you got to cut a little bit less, but I'm not convinced until I guess I see evidence that carrying that much weight, even if it is his natural weight at this point, over the course of 5 rounds, especially against a Max Holloway, who first couple of rounds I think are going to be real dicey for him. It shouldn't go that long. But by end of round 3, certainly round 4, dude, Holloway is going to be stepping on the gas. And I just don't feel like Conor's weight is going to be able to keep up in that particular scenario. What am I missing?
So I get where you're coming from, but I think you're including in the conversation a previous version of Conor McGregor that doesn't exist, right? Like if you are sitting down, if you're Conor McGregor and you're sitting down with your coach, right? And you're picking a weight class, and we've talked about the resistance, the power, all that, sure, the experience, but let's just dial in on a conversation around cardio. And you're asking your coach, where am I going to be able to go further in terms of distance, right? In terms of time, in terms of rounds, 155 or 170? What would your answer be if you were the coach? If that's your only concern, your only worry.
So I want him to go 5 rounds hard?
Yes. Where would you rather fight him at? Where would you have him fight at?
Again, dude, I don't believe he can carry 170 for 5. I think he can carry 55. Well, I mean, I don't know about 26 Conor, right? Because again,
that's what it is. That's where we're at.
Yeah, but like even then, like even I just don't believe that amount of bulk he can carry effectively Lance Armstrong style in any context.
No, and I agree. And that's why I think Max Holloway, I'm not saying that McGregor is going to be superior cardio-wise than Holloway. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is, what advantages does he have 155 versus 170? I think he's going to be better conditioned at 170 than he is at 55. All that bulk plus the weight cut, forget about him. He's not going to make it to around 4.
Yeah,
at 170,
it's actually an interesting question.
Negative, but he doesn't have the weight cut. Maybe he makes it to around 4. It's
an interesting question. Like, could he even make 55 now? I don't. Actually, you know what? Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. It's actually not an idle question, because if he wins this, and let's say Islam has loses to Gary or whatever, just a different path, and he wants Justin, you can make that fight at 70, but there's no title on the line. Sure. And again, who's to say what UFC might even do? God only knows, right? But I don't even know if he can make 55. Long Island Luke, settle this one, right? What do you think? Cardio is going to be better at 70 or 55 for old McGregor? And again, we're all agreeing.
All right, wait.
Max is going to have better cardio.
Let me put it in Long Island Luke's words and terminology, hit me. Bro. If you had to bet, right? Yeah. You had if McGregor was fighting at 155 or 170,
which one am I taking the over?
What degree of confidence would you have in between in terms of betting to go the distance? Where would you put your money at?
Fuck, man.
The fight to go to distance. More confident at 170.
Okay, but the part you're leaving out there is the ability to take damage, because if we're just talking about cardio, I'd argue it's 55, but he's going to take damage better at 70, so then it might last longer at 70. I don't know. I think we're picking hairs here. I don't think it really matters, but either way,
I think we all agree Holloway's going to have better cardio.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah, and that could prove decisive. All right, so let's talk about this now. Let's go to Holloway. Right, advantages and disadvantages for me, Danny. On the disadvantage side, it's obvious. No experience at 170, and again, it might be his walking around weight. But who's going to be the more muscly, heavier hitter of the two? And to your another point, who could be more durable as well? Although the body damage might be interesting. But anyway, in terms of on the chin, Conor's always had a rock chin, or usually anyway. And there's no question that these are all just decisive disadvantages for him. I do think, though, as you've indicated, the volume that Max is going to put on him is probably always going to be better. And I think, without the weight cut, he'll have virtually almost no weight cut, right? Very, very minimal. He's going to be able to just put constant volume on him as long as he can, not get knocked out. I think that's a key part. Going work to the body might be sort of a part of that game plan. We'll talk about that in a second. So to me, I really hate this fight at 170 for Max. I think that it does confer some advantages in terms of volume and cardio and maybe some punch resistance as well. But I think there's a lot of factors kind of working against him, and he's having to play catch up here because Conor likes his chances. And again, maybe a first fight back at 70 is almost a requirement before even 55 can even come to the conversation. How do you see it for Max?
So I disagree with you there. I actually think his volume will probably be lower at 170 than it is at 155. I think at 155 with a lighter frame, he's able to move around and do more. But once you add that extra weight, you require oxygen in order to pump, those muscles and be able to have those muscles carry that extra weight. I do think he's going to be a little bit bulkier. And again, the weight cut almost disciplines you, right? In a way. And I'm not saying he's undisciplined and he's not coming in shape, but I do think that Max Holloway is probably going to be a bit slower, which that was an advantage he would probably have over McGregor. I think McGregor cutting to 155 would get slower and Holloway would get faster. And so I do think it'll impact. I think this is all negatives for Holloway. And again, this is McGregor's return. This is the red panty night or whatever you want to call it. So you kind of have to almost take the L in those negatives for you to get the fight, right? I don't think if he would have set his foot down at 155, McGregor probably would have said no and moved on. But I think it's all negatives for Holloway. No experience fighting at 170. I do think his speed and volume, which is an attribute of his, is going to be a bit compromised at 170. And I guess maybe the only advantage is that I think maybe he's going to be a little bit sturdier and be able to take a little bit more damage. I think that goes both ways for McGregor and Holloway, but that's about it.
All right. Walk me through a realistic path for Holloway to win.
Movement, kind of like what he did against Ilia Topuria. Just stay on your back foot, jab. Don't really sit down and have an exchange with Conor and just wait for him to fade. I think you got to see out round one for sure. I think in round two, he can probably start engaging a bit more. But I think movement's going to be key. And once McGregor crosses that threshold where his strikes no longer have the same pop, then you can kind of start pouring it on him. But still, you got to be worried. But Holloway has to get out of the first round. It could, even if it's a boring one, even if you have to lose it, take off, whatever. It's still a 5-round fight. But I think he has to get out of round 5. And McGregor utilizes the clinch a lot. Remember those shoulder strikes against Cerrone at 170? Also avoid the clinch. I think he could get himself in trouble being the smaller guy.
I have a feeling that Holloway is not going to bulk up too much. Like if you go back to they fought so many times, the Poirier rematch with Max, where he just kind of cut less weight. He didn't bulk to 55 and then cut. He was still a 45er, just with a softer cut, so to speak. I actually think that he's going to get that at 170, which unfortunately makes a little bit more sense in this context because he's probably never going to fight 70 again.
Yeah.
But I generally agree. I think movement is going to be key. I think volume is going to be key. But I also think, dude, it's going to be a real big question about like what kind of offensive posture Conor takes. And if Conor takes a more defensive posture, which I don't anticipate, I'm just articulating a possibility, that would be real bad for him. And I think Holloway would move downhill on him. What I think is likely to happen is that Conor's going to take I'm not saying insanely aggressive, but kind of an aggressive forward posture for those first 2 rounds and kind of play at range the way that he does. And, you circle one way, you go to the left hand, you circle the other way, you run into a spinning back kick, sort of like trademark, corralling that Conor McGregor does. I think that's really going to be in play here. Yeah. To me, Holloway has to play a bit of I don't know what the word is, survival game, but, make it to the end of the round, and then in round 3, I think he has to step on the gas at that point and really make this guy work. So let me ask the question this way. We both generally agree with the contours of that, right? Does anyone wrestle in this fight? And if so, who?
Oof, such a good question. I think McGregor, and we've seen it. Like if he gets tired, he's going to start wrestling. We saw it against Nate Diaz, and there's also, and I think I've yet to, I think this might be like the first time I actually like vocalize this in like a program or something, but you know, it's kind of like a common thought around MMA, but people maybe don't voice this, but saving face, bro. Like people don't want to get knocked out. You know, McGregor was just making fun of Gagey of being, you know, face down, ass up. One of the reasons why McGregor has never done that is because if he ever gets in trouble, he'll take a sloppy shot and get tapped. Like people would rather get submitted than knocked out. Dude, McGregor, if he gets exhausted at some point and if it starts turning ugly for him, he doesn't want to get knocked out. He is going to wrestle. And I do think that he understands the physical advantages that he carries over at 170 over Max. There's a reason why he asked for this fight at 170, and it'd be silly for him just to have this being a striking battle. So I anticipate the clinch. Maybe not so much like he'll shoot a double, but will he try to tie up Max and maybe put him up against the cage and use the shoulder strikes, dirty boxing, and kind of put his weight on him? I do anticipate that. I'd be very surprised if Holloway chooses to wrestle here.
Yeah, I don't anticipate that either. But it's because you recall, and again, it was part of the ACL tear. But that's how McGregor won their first fight.
Yeah,
was wrestling. True. You know, which is its own kind of, by the way, pretty important achievement, I might say, and something to consider here. Again, who the hell knows what condition Conor's going to be in?
Yeah,
but we are just coming off of Max Holloway's takedown defense getting kind of audited. You know,
100%.
And I just wonder if Conor, not that he would. There's just no way he's going to have a game plan with wrestling at the heart of it. But to the point you raised, Danny, could he sprinkle it in times where he needs it? Could he sprinkle it in times where, like, steal the end of a round? Like, there's just a number of ways now where I think the wrestling equation can't be considered the preeminent way in which it might go.
Yeah.
But you can't dismiss it now in a way you might have maybe a year ago if they had fought. Right. That's kind of the part for me.
If you remember the Diaz fight, the one that he won, which he went 5 rounds at 170 pounds, clinching was a big part of it. It was a place for him to take a breath and kind of shield himself from the storm of shots that Nate Diaz would present, because he does kind of fade when he starts getting hit. He doesn't like getting hit, and you can see his spirit almost leave his body. But those breaks are important for him, because if he's not getting the knockdowns, if he's not hurting his opponent, man, he's going to have to clinch and get those, you know, those breaks, not only from the damage, but the cardio battle as well that happens on the feet.
One thing for me about Max I would like to articulate is a element of Conor's game that has always been excellent has been his timing. And, you know, you listen to Floyd Mayweather, and Floyd's, you know, he's not the only one to say this, but he was big on this. Because, for example, Floyd fought Zab Judah, and Zab was like technically faster than Floyd. Like, he was just twitchier than Floyd. But Floyd's timing was just superb. It was beyond excellent. And I think Conor, I'm not going to put him on the same level as Floyd in that regard, but it's been a hallmark of his game. I do think that one way that I think Holloway and his team are going to want to go is to be faster, right? Just quicker with the feet, quicker with the jab, touch and go, touch and go, touch and go. And I wonder what effect that might have. Do you anticipate a similar kind of both approach to weight and then that weight corresponding to the game plan with speed?
Yeah. No, I agree. Max Holloway cannot sit down and trade punch for punch with McGregor. He can't sit down and just trade combinations with him, because he will get knocked out and he will lose that battle. So the whole thing is stick and move, be quicker, be first, be in and out. And really mess with Conor's timing. I do wonder how his timing is going to be so many years away from the game, right? Because if he doesn't have that, like, he's not a volume guy. Like, he has to make the most out of every single shot. And if he doesn't, fights don't go his way. So, that itself is key for Holloway. I completely agree with you.
All right. Walk me through a realistic path of how McGregor wins.
I think, call me crazy, but I do think he can win a decision, and I do wonder if that's part of the game plan. I think with really, really specific fight management, which that's exactly what he had in the rematch against Nate Diaz, I do think he can win it. But overall, I do think probably the main strategy would be to close the distance, not so much as being in super close quarters, although sometimes maybe for clinching, but close the distance in terms of being in his distance and try to land the bigger shots. I mean, Max Holloway super durable, but Topuria did crack him and put him away. I do think that Max Holloway, even though he's up there in durability, he's probably not as durable as he used to be in years prior. And being at 170 with the power, with the size, Conor McGregor, I would assume he would like his chances of getting a knockout here. So, getting in his face, closing the distance, landing the bigger shots, making the most of it, and also minimizing as much damage as possible, whether that is to eventually get a finish or manage the fight and be able to walk away with a win.
It's at least on paper an open stance fight, right? Southpaw orthodox, but of course Max can do some switching if he needs to, and he can certainly do some directional changes. Also, it should be pointed out, Conor McGregor has a 5-inch reach advantage. He's always had really long arms, Danny, and he plays at the end of that range really, really well. I think that's going to be a component to watch here. The other part to me, Max Holloway, Danny, average fight time 16 minutes 39 seconds. Conor McGregor 8 minutes. 8 minutes.
Half of that, damn.
Right, exactly. We saw a clip on Monday's show, Danny, where I think Brett Okamoto was asking Max, like, what's the game plan? And he was like, drown him. They clearly want to drag this one out. They clearly want to push this one long. And honestly, I don't know what a better game plan would be for Max than that one. That seems to me fast, touch, go, make him work as much as you can. Later rounds, pour it on, right? That seems like the most sensible approach possible here.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And almost the only, right? Like, I'd be shocked if he does anything else but that.
Yeah. He's not like Charles Oliveira. It's like, oh, well, we've got choices now. We can go to the ground. We can play, go to the back. It doesn't exist. All right. I want to say one thing about this. We talked about what happens if Max wins. Again, I think the Makhachev thing is just not going to happen, but the Gaethje one could too. On the Conor side, if he wins, does he get a title shot? Right? Because remember, we've got these contractual situations going on where, Conor doesn't want to sign a long-term extension. And I can just tell you, I have it on some relatively decent authority that like what he wants to do is get out of this deal and go make a shit ton in Netflix, which, again, he's almost 40. Let's keep that in mind.
Yeah.
There's another thing though, which is, I have seen a lot of the narrative around this fight, Danny, be like, hey, if even Poirier said it, if he doesn't even like, Poirier was like, I don't even like McGregor, but if anyone can come back and do something special, it's him. It seems to me that if I were to say to you, oh, if Conor loses, this is the end for him, that's just not true. He could lose this one, he could lose the next one, and I still think he would make some big money on Netflix, right? I just don't buy. Maybe it's less, I'm not saying it wouldn't hurt. That's not my point, but like it's the end. Like people just won't care. I saw Kimbo Slice lose a bunch of times. People still wanted to go see him, right?
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Kimbo Slice, Miami legend. But I will say this: if he loses here, and not if it's close, but if he loses here, and especially if he gets finished, I do think that is the end of any projection of Mystic Mac. Of this guy who can just beat the odds, of this guy who could just say what he wants and then do it. It's not the end of him as a box office attraction. It's not the end of him as something that people want to pay money to see or would watch on Netflix. But people, to me, are kind of hanging on this idea that he can still produce magic. And I think if you get throttled here, that phenomenon, that will get put to bed. Am I right?
Yeah, that magic of his has been hanging on for a thread for quite some time. That whole allure of him has eroded with the losses to Dustin Poirier, right? But then you can say, oh, well, the leg, this and that, right? But there's only so many excuses that you can make. At this point in time, if you were to get trashed by Max Holloway, yeah, that idea that he can hang with the elite or be close to it is completely gone. Could he still be a capable fighter? Yeah, sure. We'll see how he loses, if he even loses, right? But the fact that like he could go and do something great and win a world title and have meaningful fights and relevant cutting edge level MMA, that shit's gone, bro. That shit's completely gone. I agree. And Max is the perfect test for that because Max is not the best fighter out there. But he's been fighting the best fighters out there for quite some time and in recent years, and he's been quite competitive, right? So, like, it'd be a very good gauge to see where he's at, depending on how he shows up and how he performs. But yeah, I agree with you. No matter what, he's going to be an attraction. But the idea of him being relevant in this sport, MMA wise, sporting wise, that shit just completely disappears. And you know what's crazy? And I just thought about it like in the last few days, and I didn't even let myself think about it prior because it's just such a crazy idea. But if you really think about it, it's not. How many fighters right now are close to breaking that record of becoming a three-way world champion, right? Very, very few. At some point, Henry Cejudo was. We thought that Poatan was going to be the guy. Obviously, lost in that heavyweight fight against Gan. But McGregor is realistically kind of one of them, right? Like, because he was champion at 45, champion at 155. And if he wins here, we talk about that one way or another. UFC is probably going to try to sneak him into a title fight, especially if that's a way for him to sign an extension, whether that's at 170 or 155. You know what I'm saying? He could be 2 fights from breaking that, which it sounds ridiculous, but you know, it's somewhat possible. And at least if he were to win here, like you put him back in the conversation of being a relevant fighter. Again, if he loses here, all that shit's gone, man. He's not fighting for a title ever.
Long Island, what do we miss? What aspect of this fight did we not get to?
Nothing. I'm just thinking, well, all right. One aspect you didn't get to that I'm thinking is, isn't Max going to immediately target that leg? Like you guys were saying, he's going to like out cardio him in the beginning. I think he's going to be aggressive in the beginning. You got to immediately kick that leg and see how he holds up. What
He's not a prolific leg kicker.
I know, but it's someone who's coming off of like a crazy leg break. I know it was years ago at this point, but like I that'd be my first plan of action, even if you're going to try and do it from the outside.
I honestly think Conor might throw it. I really do believe that.
Just to let him know.
Yeah.
I think that could be a thing, Long Island Luke, like later in the fight, but you don't want to be kicking and leave yourself open for a counter, I think, early, especially when Conor will have the power. So I think, again, movement, boxing, and then maybe at some point later on the fight start opening up with kicks once the power is just not as meaningful for McGregor. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
The issue is if you've got, to Danny's point, if you've got a need for footwork and movement, it's going to be hard to sit down and plant and throw, you know what I mean? Or you can throw punches, but leg kicks or any kind of kick. And especially with a guy who's going to be rangier than you, Holloway's going to want to encroach on him a little, not play at the end of the range. And that's going to make it a little more difficult to do. But over the course of, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds, I think anything is possible.
Yeah. I'm also like, I don't think this fight goes very long, man. Like my official prediction is like Holloway KO round 3. Like, I feel like I just don't think Conor has the cardio at this point to go longer than even 15 minutes. I don't think he can go 15 minutes at this point. So if Max's game plan is to tire him out, it's like, well, you got to be like, I don't know, you got to be doing something in that time. Like, what is Conor's game plan? Conor's going to try and bum rush him, I would assume. Like, what are you going to do otherwise? I don't know. I'm interested to see how it plays out.
All right, Danny, time for official prediction. What do you think?
Max Holloway, either a late stoppage, round 4 or 5, or he wins the decision. Either or.
I'll go Holloway TKO 4. Okay. I'll go 4. I think he'll survive. I think Conor, honestly, I could see almost like the Mayweather fight where like Conor wins early and you're like, holy shit, dude, this guy's back, blah, blah, blah. And then it just kind of slowly goes in a direction and then eventually, boom. I think I'll say this. If you get to any point in the fight past round 2 where Holloway is starting to move downhill, Conor's a bit of a front runner.
100%.
He's a bit of a front runner, and I just don't think there's a way he can come back. So like he really has to keep like Poirier, through his big power in their second fight, was able to keep Max from ever building that momentum. Remember that? Every time Max is like, oh, he's getting more, boom, some heavy shot would take that out. I think Conor has to have a similar kind of approach, let's say.
I agree. Yeah. Holloway, late stoppage or decision, either or. But I do think that that McGregor is not as washed as people think, and wouldn't be surprised if he wins round 1, maybe even has some close calls there where we kind of see him touch up on Max.
Yeah, and again, honestly, I'm not surprised by much. Like if he stopped Max with a big shot, it'd be like, yeah, it's 170. Yeah. Max got stopped by Ilya not too long ago. He's also getting a little bit older. Like, it's kind of what it is now these days. Yep. All right, before we get to the rest of the card, let's do this. Let's remind everyone about our good friends at DraftKings taking care of you guys on fight night. You can see down here below. The big fight is coming up. Who do you think is going to win? We just gave our picks. We want to know in the comments below what you guys think. And of course, we have teamed up with DraftKings to bring you a brand new offer. Yes, indeed. DraftKings is now available in all 50 states. Yes, all 50 states from New York to California. So no matter where you are, you're always connected to the fun. Here's what's going to happen, guys. New DraftKings customers sign up with the code KOMBAT. That's combat with a K, KOMBAT. Spend $5 to get 200 in rewards within 21 days. That's code KOMBAT with a K. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Bet with DK Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, 1-800-MY-RESET. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org on behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas. Bet tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. 21 plus, void in Canada. Event contract trading with DraftKings predictions involves risk of loss. Availability varies. Bet to get bonus bets that expire in 7 days. Trade to get $50 in prediction dollars that expire in 1 year. Issued every 7 days via click-to-claim for 21 days. One non-withdrawable reward redeemable. Predictions offer void in New York. Ends July 19th. Terms at dkng.co/audio. All right, Danny, we talked about this card being actually a pretty good card. Not for merely UFC standards, but especially by Conor standards, where he's making the most on pay-per-view. That's obviously the explanation, right? He makes all the money on pay-per-view. They don't want to pay a bunch of other people, but that's kind of gone. So maybe they feel better about it. Also, they're making money hand over fist. Let's talk about this co-main event. Benoit St. Denis is taking on Paddy Pimblett. And we're going to talk about some of the odds a little bit later, Danny. But I want to read these out to you. -148 for Benoit St. Denis. Paddy Pimblett plus 124. Very, 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 very close odds. So let me ask you. We have Benoit St. Denis, who's looked pretty good recently. We had Paddy, who looked, real bad against Justin. But Justin now wins against Ilya, so I feel like some people are kind of revisiting the relevancy of that. Talk to me about these odds, or just the closeness of this fight. Why do people think this fight is so close?
Oh man, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. BSD should be a bigger favorite. Why do I think it's so close? Because I think people, and again, I like Paddy. I like his whole persona. I think he's a character. I think, I like what he does in terms of bringing attention to the fight game. But I don't think people are necessarily looking at the skills in there and what's happening technically. I just think they're just looking at the results. So, Gage all of a sudden wins the UFC lightweight title, and you go, okay, well, Paddy Pimblett only lost to the champion, right? But how did he lose? Like, you got to look how he was throwing his punches, his takedown attempts. Like, you got to look at how, or his lack of, you got to look at how he actually fought in there. And I think a lot of these sports books, which obviously make the lines, fall back on stats, and stats don't always tell the story. Specifically in MMA, maybe they do in other sports, but in MMA, there's much more to that. This fight shouldn't be this close on the odds. BSD is clearly the better striker, clearly the better wrestler, maybe not so much a jiu-jitsu guy, but that's about even. Paddy Pimblett should be a bigger favorite. Sorry, BSD should be a bigger favorite. I don't know why Paddy Pimblett's still being, I guess, this highly rated, Luke. I don't know. Am I being unfair?
Yeah, no, well, let me say this. If you look at the last 3 wins by BSD, he beat Hoofy, he beat Dariush, he beat Hooker. Now, there are asterisks with all of those. Hoofy had just really poor takedown defense in that fight. I don't think there's really any question. And Dariush and Hooker are kind of older. Plus, BSD got Hooker off of the Armin fight, where he had already been beat up in relatively close succession. But what I would say is this. Which 3 fights of Paddy's career are as good as that? Which 3 wins?
0.
You know what I mean?
He went to distance with Tony Ferguson, bro. It's true. Everyone's finishing him. Michael Chiesa finished him.
Yeah.
He went to distance with Tony Ferguson. All respect to Michael Chiesa, but I'm just saying, Michael Chiesa at the time was, older as well, like closer to retirement. Dude, Paddy Pimblett has good jiu-jitsu, but his wrestling's not really there. His striking is not really there. His striking defense is terrible. He does have a great chin, and he's tough. But, dude, I don't really rate his skills all that high. And again, he might shut me up, and I've been underestimating all this time. But look, if Jared Gordon was able to grind out a fight, again, all respect to Jared Gordon, dude, BSD is an expert at that. What do you think BSD is going to do in close quarter combat, in the clinch, in dirty boxing, with the wrestling?
Bro, so let me give you two responses.
Winning this fight.
Let me give you two responses to this that I think are worthy of consideration. The first is that BSD's wrestling is just vastly better, which is, there's just no argument about. Like, for example, I'm looking at the fight metric. Takedowns per 15 minutes for BSD is 4.19, right? It's just high by any measurement. Paddy's is 0.69, right? Like, yes, is Paddy good at jiu-jitsu? Yes, he is very good at jiu-jitsu. That's not, no one would say otherwise. But the wrestling with the jiu-jitsu, BSD is just like miles ahead of him in that regard. However, there's two things that I would say. One, BSD is actually, it's one thing I would say, but it phases out in two different directions.
Can I say it? Let me try to guess. Careless. That could cost him two different ways. One, Paddy's ability to find the back off recklessness, especially from takedowns, is actually pretty good. And there's multiple times he's done that in fights, especially against the fence, where he'll drape over the top of a guy who's like trying to double leg him, and then he'll find a way to the back from there. The other one that to me is more interesting, Danny, is like, for example, when Chandler kind of came rushing in, Paddy hit that flying knee on him, and he tried it on Gaethje, and almost hit it on him a couple times too. I could easily see him hitting that on BSD. Now, again, I'm kind of saying, Danny, well, it's like he's got one weapon here and then one kind of phase that he can enter if BSD kind of lets him. I realize I'm not making an affirmative case for Paddy in that regard, at least not a very strong one. But I will say that I agree with you that BSD's got more abilities and he's got more ways to win. And I would probably agree it's his fight to lose. But the recklessness plus the durability of Paddy, which I guess could be compromised somewhat since the Gaethje loss, that gives me a little bit of pause. I agree with you. And by the way, just because, so I don't sound like a total dickhead on the show, but when I say a fighter is not that good or whatever, I'm talking about the elite. I'm talking about the guys that have made it in the UFC and are in the rankings. So it's like, keep that in mind, right? Like, he's obviously a good fighter and a successful one. But I'm just saying, compared to his other peers that are in the elite, I don't have him that highly rated. But back to your point, I do agree that BSD is careless. And I don't think it's crazy to think that Paddy can maybe snatch in a guillotine and win this by submission. But do I think he can win on points against BSD? No. Do I think he can knock out BSD? No. I think he, at some point, losing the fight, because I do hold BSD skills in a higher level, he can maybe snatch in a submission. Yes, because what I mentioned, BSD does get careless. However, though, Luke, I will say this. There's been a change in BSD, and I hope you've noticed it. I don't know. Certainly early in his UFC career, careless and was just kind of more interested in entertaining and just being this brawler. But I think after losing to Poirier, which is a fight that was a winnable one and that he was winning, and then the Renato Moicano one, he just got beat up really quickly, and I don't really count that. It was just kind of like all downhill quickly for him in that first round. It only lasted a round. Ever since, he's got 4 straight wins, and what I've seen from BSD is more responsible fighting. Again, I still think he has that DNA of carelessness and could get carried away into a brawl, but I do think he hit a switch. I do think that he's a lot more careful now than he was prior to that Poirier loss. And that happened to Gaethje at some point too. He still kept his chaotic style, but at some point, I forgot what loss it was exactly. It might have been even against Poirier. I'm not sure.
It was the Poirier fight. Mm-hmm.
There was a lesson there that he realized, man, if I wasn't so crazy, I probably could have won this fight. And I have seen a change in BSD. I'll say that much.
Let's talk about Showergate. Long Island, what do we know about BSD's inability to shower?
We know that he's got staph again. I mean, or presumably, you know, he says he doesn't have it, but you can see the scab there. I mean, you know, what
I'll say this. I'll say this. If you've known anybody who's ever fought professionally, their knees, feet, like from Matt Byrne and Danny, you know this, right? Like, they're not only are their hands messed up, obviously, right? Because you have to punch and whatnot, but their feet, their knees, like, they're covered in, I don't know, not merely skin disorders, but like, these people need, you know, aloe vera in the worst kind of way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have staph. Do you think he has staph, Danny?
Well, he has fought with staff before, right? Didn't he open
Yes.
up about that one time?
Poirier, the Poirier fight, he was on antibiotics.
Yeah, like every BSD fight week, there's always pictures of his body parts covered with something that's questionable. He is French, right? So don't they shower a lot, right? That's like the thing that they say, right? Am I being
we're doing smelly
here?
French people jokes?
That's hey man, I don't make these up, man. That's just what I hear online. You know? Yeah, I apologize to the French people. I'm sure you guys have great hygiene. Sorry. Dude, it's also like maybe it's not on him too. Like some people are just more what would be the right word? Their immune system, their skin is just better at fighting off these things, right? It's just like kind of like, you know, some people bruise easily, some others don't. Also, like, is his gym clean? Like maybe it's just up on his gym. Like I don't know if his gym partners also have the same issue. You know, different gyms have different hygiene. Some people take it very seriously, some are more old school, like fuck it, just get in there and train. But yeah, this seems to be a recurrent thing with BSD.
Which way is this fight likely to play out, right? Does BSD, who, you know, could BSD win the stand-up? Maybe, but it feels to me like BSD's best chance to win is to make it a ground affair, but then just to be, you know, the better grappler of the two, so to speak, like Nogueira versus Verdum. You have two guys who could strike it out, but they decided to grapple their way, and Verdum was simply much better. Did you anticipate something like that here? Like, in other words, how unlikely would it be if this fight never went to the ground?
I'll say this about Paddy. Paddy did develop somewhat of a decent and a type of striking that works for him at range. Specifically in the fight against, which one was it? It was against King Green, which eventually led to a submission. But he has developed some longer range strikes that are good. And I think that's probably where he wants to keep this fight. Whereas BSD wants to close the distance, wants to be in the clinch, wants to do dirty boxing, and wants to make this fight gritty and nasty. So I think it's going to be a lot of that. BSD closing the distance, grinding out Paddy Pimblett to eventually either wear him out to get a TKO or wear him out to get a submission, or what I think it's most likely, take the decision win.
Why did the UFC make this fight? And what I mean by that is, you know, all these fights are made somewhat by just, you know, hey, who's available, right? Yeah. But this is a bigger card where there's a little bit more. This is not an Apex fight. You know, this is a T-Mobile fight, right? So there's a big difference. Part of me, Danny, feels like on the one hand, they wanted to give Paddy a fight that was winnable, right? You're not going to fight a guy who can just beat the fucking bags off of you. That's one, like on the feet, I mean. And then the other one is, like, you know, it's going to be a ground battle. And then the other one, though, is like, it's like, well, maybe they want to make it because they really like what BSD has. They want to develop their French market. They want to see if this guy can really be a title contender. He's got, you know, certainly a gung-ho spirit, I think we can say. Whether or not he's got more than that, we'll see. What is your assessment of the UFC's thinking about why this fight got booked?
That is a great question. And one that I don't really have like an exact answer for. Sometimes it's obvious, right? Like, why are they making Gable Stevenson versus Elisha Ellison? Like, you kind of understand why. But, you know, you never know. It's MMA. But for this one, it's a little tougher. I would say that they have a big interest in the French market. And right now, there isn't a figure that sticks out that they could really get behind. Manon Fiorot already had her shot at the belt, came up short. Nasruddin Imavov doesn't seem like a guy that the UFC is really trying to push, or else he would have gone a title shot over Strickland, or else he would have gone a quick title shot at Strickland. And it seems that we're now talking about Chimaev getting an immediate rematch. And if you really look around, like, who's left that's at the top that has the potential to be skilled and a guy that they can get behind and push for some time, because, you know, he's going to stay at the top and have some good results. The clear option there is BSD, but at the cost of what? Paddy Pimblett? I guess with Paddy Pimblett, it doesn't really matter if he wins or loses. He can go fight Topuria and it'll be big regardless. So maybe they see it as that. But again, I do believe this is a very tough fight for Pimblett. And knowing how the UFC has kind of treated him in the past, it would seem that this is counterintuitive in terms of what they're trying to do in propping him up, you know?
Yeah. I don't know how to ask this. Like, if Paddy loses here, because it was kind of funny, right? So his stock really dropped after the Gaethje loss, because not only did he lose, but he got like whooped And, you know, he just looked kind of bad in parts too, you know, like he was just flailing, quite literally flailing.
Yeah.
But then Justin beats Topuria, and you're like, okay, but that win didn't age as bad as, or that loss didn't age as bad as we thought. But then if he follows it up with a guy who it's like, okay, you got beat up on the feet against Justin. Let's say he gets beat up on the ground against BSD. I mean, I still think he's important for the UK market, but at that point, you're like, you know, okay. I mean, I don't know what mystery would be left to like uncover at that point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he's 31.
Right.
So I think right now there's still a question about his ceiling, right? I think I have the answer, and I've expressed it here on the show, but I don't know for sure, right? Like, but I think if he loses to BSD, we definitely have an answer as far as like what is his ceiling and what is his potential, which is still pretty good. Like, he's still one of the best 15 fighters in the world in a very difficult weight class, but is he elite? Is he top 5, top 2, top 3? Yeah, probably not. And I think we'll get a clear answer. Now, if he were to beat BSD, as you mentioned, his only losses to the champion right now, okay, then maybe, you know, I'll take the L. And then maybe we can ask questions and kind of reimagine his potential. But yeah, I think with Pimblett, if he loses, again, he's still a big star. And I think you can always make that Topuria fight. And that's what the UFC was trying to set up from the beginning, right? They didn't give Paddy Pimblett, Arman Sarukian in January or February, whenever that fight was, because they wanted his best chances possible at winning so he can go fight Topuria and have this massive fight. Well, Topuria is no longer the champion, so he can fight absolutely anybody, whether they're coming off a win or a loss. So I think whatever happens on Saturday, Paddy Pimblett's future involves a fight with Ilia Topuria, in my opinion.
Let's move along. Oh, you want to make a prediction? You don't have to, but if you want to make a prediction,
BSD decision.
I'll probably agree with that. All right, let's go to one now.
Whoa. Danny with the wild BSD prediction take, and you're just going to agree with that? BSD's never won by decision. We're just take that, and we're just going to be like, yeah.
All right, I'll say BSD TKO 3.
All right. I don't want to take Paddy, but
He's
I'll be
sorcerer, Luke.
I'll take Paddy just to be the only
Don't get
one.
knocked out.
Could happen. All right, let's talk about a fight. It's a rematch, not the only one on the main event's not the only rematch here. Corey Sandhagen at bantamweight takes on Mario Bautista. Now, what this is interesting, they fought before. Sandhagen, I'm not going to say easily subbed him, but something approximating easily subbed him. The first time, however, I forget what year was that, Long Island? I forget what year it was.
So that was the Dillashaw Henry Cejudo, the first ESPN
2019,
card, January 2019. Yeah,
I was
there.
Card.
That was in Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brooklyn. That was at the Barclays Center.
Yeah.
Corey Sandhagen sitting at -135. Bautista sitting at plus 114. This fight to me is hella interesting, Danny. And the reason why is because we talked about in the main event, you know, how much can you take from the first fight between Conor and Max? I mean, not much, really. I mean, it was so long ago. They're so different. Now, this one is not as long ago, but they're very, very different. And in the case of Corey Sandhagen, he's coming off that loss to Merab. Meanwhile, you got Bautista, who's, yes, he did lose to Nurmagomedov, but I thought put himself, you know, he fought commendably and then came back and had a nice win over Oliveira in the process. Danny, how much will this fight be different from their first fight?
Oh, man, this is actually one of my favorite fights. I don't think it's going to be the craziest fight. I don't expect this to be the most entertaining fight. But in terms of, like, the intrigue of, like, what's going to happen, dude, I really don't know what's going to happen in this fight. I think since they both have fought, Bautista has clearly evolved more, and he's in a better career moment right now. But skill for skill, I do think probably Corey Sandhagen has more tools, I think, but it's such a tough fight to break down. Yeah, I think Bautista can put. Look, I'll say this: I don't think it goes to a finish. I think both guys are very, very tough. They have great fight management skills. I think it goes to a decision. It can go either way.
Dude, you watch that first fight, and it's like Corey was fighting so aggressively. Like, in a way, he just, like, with swag, and it was fun to watch, but I don't think he fights quite. He might be better now, but he doesn't fight like that. Right. Meanwhile, if you look at Bautista, first of all, he doesn't look as filled out. Like, now he looks bigger, and more to the point, he's just way, way, way more improved. Bautista is probably the best fighter that's the most disrespected, maybe on the entire UFC roster. It's fucking crazy to me. But, dude, the thing that really gets me is how similar their stat line is. Okay? Listen to this. Takedowns per 15 minutes. Sandhagen, 1.15. Bautista, 1.9. So pretty close. Let's see. Takedown accuracy, 34%, 38%. Let's see. Takedown defense, 56, 55. Submission average, 0.2, 0.8. So they were within an integer or less, actually, between each other. How about this? Striking defense for Sandhagen, 56. Bautista, 54. Strikes absorbed per minute, 3.47, 3.98. How about this? Striking accuracy, 45% for Sandhagen, 48% for Bautista. And then the funny one is strikes landed per minute, 4.86 for Sandhagen, which is high, or at least above average anyway. And then Mario Bautista, 5.30. Like, I'm not saying that stats tell the story, Danny, but Sandhagen has kind of been treated as like, oh, the upper tier of this division. And Bautista has kind of been considered as like, not lower tier per se, but not part of the upper room. And yet statistically, the difference between them is borderline negligible. Yeah. And I don't think enough people appreciate how good Bautista has become. And I think the stats, at least on some level, they speak to that.
And by the way, I love your usage of stats. It's something I should probably do more in terms of my analysis and stuff, because I do think it's important. But at the same time, back to the point that I had made earlier, like their stats are crazy similar, right? But like their styles of fighting are so different, right? And this is what I'm saying. Like, sure, stats are very, very important. They definitely tell a story and they give you some concrete evidence. But at the same time, in MMA specifically, there's more to it, right? And yeah, you would think by the stats they would fight similarly, but two vastly completely different styles. But I agree. Bautista super underrated, super underestimated. Maybe he doesn't have the it factor, the appeal as a pretty style as Corey Sandhagen's. So maybe he hasn't gotten the promotional rub, but he's finally been getting some big fights. We saw him against Umar. We saw him get a main event against Lokdog. And now he's fighting Corey Sandhagen. And this is his chance to not only avenge a loss, but to show that he is part of that elite group, man.
I'll say this, too. The first fight, Sandhagen just locks up a sub, often over pursuing Bautista, basically, right? You can kind of see that here. I don't think this fight is going to go that way this time. Win or lose, it doesn't matter to me. I think what you're going to get here, Danny, is, it's kind of funny. Sandhagen has been able to wrestle in fights where he needed to, but he's obviously reputationally known as a striker. I think he's going to resort to that. I think this is going to be a case where he's going to try and keep Bautista at the end of his punches, maybe punish over pursuit if such that it exists. But I feel like the thing that Sandhagen might get caught up in is the what do you want to say? The workman-like approach of Bautista. His willingness to just drive, work, labor, like just his willingness to labor hard, to make something happen, to edge around, to edge a scramble, like you name it. He's going to be able to do that, or at least I think that's going to be his forward way of trying to win. I think the odds in this case are probably pretty accurate. I think they're probably pretty fair. I'm going to lean Sandhagen because I do think the point you raised earlier, like which guy has more tools to win, I do think that probably belongs to Sandhagen. But I would not be surprised, dude, if this comes down to, first of all, I wouldn't be surprised if Bautista wins, but like I think it's going to be close and down. I just don't see a stoppage. I'll put it that way. Yeah. I'd be very, 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 very surprised if this one ended early.
Yeah. Also, Bautista, like he's got so much more experience now. I don't think he'll make a mistake that'll lead him to get knocked out or submitted again. And Corey Sandhagen is tough as shit, and again, a very smart fighter as well. So 100% agree with you. This ends in decision. And I think this might be the closest fight on the card. Like, I really have a tough time making a prediction. I very much see it like a 50-50. I do think he has, speaking about Corey Sandhagen, more tools, as I mentioned. And I do think he's maybe like the most sophisticated fighter. But one fight that kind of lingers in my mind, which makes me kind of doubt myself and make a case for Bautista, because I am too picking Sandhagen here, is the Merab fight. You mentioned the workman-like attitude that Bautista can have that can frustrate and maybe steal a decision from Sandhagen. Well, we saw that with Merab Dvalishvili, and this might be a bit of a hot take, but skill for skill, who do I think is actually the better fighter? I think Corey Sandhagen has more tools than Merab, but yet he still found himself losing that fight. So I can see Bautista doing very, very similar things that Merab did and get himself a decision win here.
Yeah, again, only 3 rounds.
Yeah.
You know, it's not impossible to drop 2 of those depending on one mistake here or and you know, Trevor Whitman always talks about it, like in these fights, man, when they're close, it's really the first guy to make a mistake.
Yeah.
You know, is the first guy to make a mistake. And I think you're going to get something similar with that one here. Bautista is a dog, but in my opinion, a very, 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 very live dog. This is a fun one.
Hey, let me ask you this real quick. Sorry,
go ahead.
Before we move on, because I know you appreciate the technique aspect and you know, you followed Corey Sandhagen closely. You mentioned something that caught my interest and it's something that I've picked up as well. His style, right? Like Bautista has more or less maintained the same style and just has perfected it and gotten better with it. But Corey Sandhagen, because I went back and I watched that fight with Bautista, he clearly fights different. He was more of a TJ Dillashaw, aggressive. I think even in that fight, there's a TJ Dillashaw comparison from the commentators. And now he's like more of a Dom Cruz, you know, on the back foot. And I just felt like in that first fight with Bautista, I saw Corey Sandhagen that his strikes felt more meaningful. His strikes felt like they presented more danger. And he was a kind of like a serious knockout threat. And I think at some point he actually rocks Bautista in that first fight. And that kind of has dissipated. And he has improved. I'm not saying he hasn't and he's regressed. But his ability to pose danger, I do feel like there's been some regression there in Corey Sandhagen's game, from my opinion.
It's a good comment. It's the thing I noticed too. I think guys who like Sandhagen, who are very, very thoughtful guys about how they think about their game, they, you know, there's obviously a learning curve coming from the regional scene to the UFC. It's like you can just walk guys down if you're very, very good in the regional scene. You're going to beat almost everybody. You know, there's obviously some exception. I think he had kind of a self-consciousness because what ended up happening is it didn't cost him in the Bautista fight. But if you go and watch other fights he had, you know, for example, to me, like the Dillashaw fight would be an example of this. He might over pursue with like swag, get taken down, and then he would just kind of fight off of his back, right? And it's this whole way of thinking about like, I'm not being disciplined with position, I'm getting taken down, and I'm fighting in phases that I should not even be fighting in unless I'm electing to do it. You know, you think you're fighting on your terms, but what ends up happening is you end up fighting on theirs over time. And I think he really tried to dial that back. But in dialing that back, it made his style less, you know, jukey and in your face and, you know, that kind of the thing you're describing. To your point, it has overall made him more skilled. And I think the biggest difference, obviously, is also his wrestling. Yeah. His wrestling has gotten way better. So, you know, the skills have grown, but you're right, dude. Like there's if you watch that fight, you'd be like, dude, where's this guy been? You know, but you can't, it's just really, really hard to fight like that against elite guys. And I think Sandhagen had enough of those losses where he was like, I just can't keep fighting this way anymore. I think that's what it was.
I do wonder if there's like some sort of middle ground because I do think the lack of like posing like a knockout threat, which dude, he used to knock people out. He knocked out Marlon Moraes, had a crazy knockout over Frank Edgar. People forget this guy was a finisher.
For sure. Going to be tough to do it against Bautista. Yeah, there's no question about that. All right, let's talk about this one, which I know Danny's hot for. Brandon Royval, Raw Dog, friend of the show here, is going to take on Lonnie Kavanagh, who's got the weirdest looking name, but he certainly made a name for himself in Mexico when he defeated Brandon Moreno in his last contest. Kavanagh enters as the favorite here at minus 218, Royval at plus 180. What do you say about this one, Danny? I mean, clearly Kavanagh you know, it's kind of funny, right? You lose to Energy Charles Johnson, but then he comes back and then he just houses on short notice, no less, at altitude, I believe, Brandon Moreno. He looked so slick in that fight. He looked so ready. He looked way, way smoother than Moreno, who's got his own issues. Yeah, pardon me, about being washed. I think Kavanagh was one of the bigger surprises for me recently in this division, and I wonder, Danny, is the style here Kavanagh who can play at range and set things up and blah blah blah? Royval doesn't have the ability to do that, but what he does have the ability to do is crash into you and disrupt rhythm. Is that how you see this fight? At least the challenge of how this fight could play out?
Yeah, Royval's clearly the more battle-tested guy. He's somebody that thrives in chaos because he's extremely durable. He's got crazy amounts of cardio. He's not gun-shy whatsoever. And we've yet to see that from Lonnie. Maybe Lonnie can surpass him in that area. I don't know, but we just haven't seen it. And we've seen a lot of people fade against Brandon Royval in that aspect. But if this turns out to be like a kickboxing fight, shot for shot, I do think that, at least technically speaking, Loney does seem to be a little cleaner. He seems to be far more explosive. People really sleep on his power and how hard he hits. There's very few guys like him at 125 that can post that level of strength in their shots. And just has a sturdier frame, in my opinion, than Royval. I don't want to call Royval frail, but he's a little more, I guess, more fluid. And that, in terms of like a straight up kickboxing fight, Loney's going to win 10 out of 10. But if this fight does go into those, chaotic moments, which Royval does seem to thrive in, as I mentioned, and does seem to, propose almost in every fight, I do think it could be a tough fight for Loney. I don't like the odds. I don't think they really paint the full picture. I think this fight's a bit closer than what the odds present it to be. But I like Loney in this one. I think he wins. I was taken away by that performance. Short notice, Mexico City against Brandon Moreno. I think he can do something similar here and take a decision.
You were at that fight, right?
Not this time around. This year I was not.
Okay. All right. Nevertheless, let me read you the losses that Royval has had in his last 5, okay? These are the names. Ready? Pantoja, Van, Kopp. Literally 2 former champions and a guy who might be a future champion or is certainly on the precipice of a title shot. Are people sleeping on Royval? Like if those are the only guys he's losing to, how bad could he actually be?
No, I don't think people are sleeping on him. I think maybe the casuals are, but I think the hardcores have a pretty clear gauge that if you want to be Brandon Royval, you got to be a championship caliber level fighter, right? Like if you're a scrub, you're going to get washed, or if you're a decent fighter, you're going to get beat. You have to be very, very, very good to beat Brandon Royval. I don't think people are sleeping on him at all. I know he said that in media days before, like he feels like people underestimate him, but I don't know. I feel like people kind of hold him in good regard in terms of like where he ranks and sits in the division.
I think they like him, and I think they respect him, certainly because that Van fight was madness, right? But I don't.
Fight. This guy's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, fair point. Yeah, fair point. And
odds wise, he's been the underdog in his last 5 fights. That's probably why he feels that way.
Okay, sure.
Because even the Tyra fight, he was an underdog. He ended up winning. So
yeah, fair point. And that's a good win too. And then he beat Moreno as well. Let me ask you, like they both have wins over Moreno, but the one that was more recent was Kavanagh. Let me just ask the question this way: how much of the win over over Moreno for Kavanagh, how much of it is fool's gold? And what I mean by that is, when you watch the fight, did Kavanagh look good? Yes. And to your point, short notice, at altitude, you're the B side, like the whole thing. There's no way to look at that and be like, oh, he just lucked his way into this. No. That's not my point. But it's also hard to watch Moreno these days and come to the conclusion that he's not suffering diminishment. So walk me through the value of that Moreno win in your mind.
I think it holds a lot of value. I think if you look at it on paper, it might look a little bit more because obviously a former champion and Brandon has been at the top for so long. But I still think it holds a lot of value in MMA today. I do think that although I agree with you, Brandon has taken some steps back in his career and in his level of fighting, I still consider him easily a top 10. And I think, maybe, I don't know, top 8 or something. I do still hold Brandon Moreno in high regard. And to back my point, like prior to losing to Loney, like the fight against Arturo Taira, okay, was very quick. He had him in a triangle the entire first round. We can't really make much of it, okay? And he ended up getting stopped, which I do think the stoppage was controversial. But prior to that, and we're still talking about 2025, like not that long ago, he beat Steve Erceg and he beat Amir Albasi, who, again, are not championship level fighters, at least not yet, but certainly guys that are, right outside of the top 5. So beating Brandon Moreno, especially in his hometown, well, not hometown, but home country, at altitude, it's a big deal, man. And that's why I have Loney in high regard. And I think this guy's going to fight for a belt, man.
I'll say this. I know he got knocked out by Charles Johnson. And so everyone's going to, hold it against
Joshua Van got knocked out by Charles Johnson. Okay?
I know. But then Charles Johnson,
getting slept by Charles Johnson is probably the best thing that can happen to you at flyweight.
It's so weird, right? Like Charles Johnson's had the most remarkable career. He'll beat legit guys. And then he'll lose to guys you'd be like, he should never lose to him, but he just kind of does. It's kind of funny. Dude, but I want to point out
Michael Johnson of flyweight, and I love Charles Johnson. But like,
is that what he is?
Dude, dude, Michael Johnson beat Poirier. Michael Johnson beat Tony Ferguson back when they were prime.
Yeah.
Michael Johnson, there's some fights where you go, dude, this guy's like championship level. And, he beats some guys that you're like, what? And then he loses to some guys that you're like, dude, but yeah, I think that's probably the best analogy I can give you.
Yeah. So let me say this, though, in the stat line, and there's a lot of differences in the grappling stat line. I think the most impressive one to me, takedown defense for Royval is 45%. Takedown defense for Kavanagh is 94%. So, that's going to be important should he need it, because Brandon Royval, by the way, great at subs, jiu-jitsu black belt, that whole thing. But the one that stands out to me, Danny, in the striking department, there's some differences in a couple places, but the big one for me is in striking defense. Brandon Royval, 43%. That's a little on the low side.
Yeah.
Kavanagh, 56%. Now, the initial question I had asked was like Brandon crashing into you. Kavanagh likes to play a little bit of that game where he's almost like Izzy. I mean, they don't have the same style, but the idea of taking my time to set up, and then I'm going to wait, and then I'm going to pop you. I'm not going to be there afterwards, or if you miss, then I'll go. Like being very selective to the extent possible about your entries and exits, right? That's sort of what I mean, and playing the distance game correctly. Whereas Royval doesn't play that game, but he has proven to be quite sturdy. If Royval plays Kavanagh's game, where he's trying to play at range, I just think he gets picked apart, right? To the point, but you raised the kickboxing one. How much can Royval disrupt that? Like materially speaking, how much can he take away Kavanagh's desire to have this one almost be like a slow motion duel?
Well, he's done it before. I do think that's a possibility. And I do wonder, I think Royval has to start early here too. Like he has to bring that reality early into the fight. If he's gonna, take round off to kind of feel him out, this and that, and kind of start that into the second, you're in a tough fight, because now you have to win the next 2 rounds, and that's not guaranteed. But look, if he just makes this a brawl from round 1, I do think that Royval can do a lot to take him out of that. I do wonder, though, and again, and I mentioned it a few minutes ago, about the power of Loney. I do think it's something worth noting, if that can almost serve as a reset. And we mentioned it also in the main event, where Holloway would get going in the fight against Poirier, right, when analyzing McGregor Holloway, and then Poirier would bring him right back into that reality, right? Like, yeah, maybe this turns into a little brawl and this and that, but the moment Loney cracks, maybe that kind of resets Royval, and we start the whole dance again and the whole process. But again, I see this fight very 50-50. I think, as I mentioned to you, Royval is very capable of forcing his game onto Loney Kavanagh.
Let's talk about the final fight on the main card, if we can here. King Green taking on Terrence McKinney. This one is kind of funny to talk about. Actually, you know what? Let's start off with this. I think we have a clip here of, it's not Bobby Green anymore. It's King Green, talking about how this fight came to be with friends of the show here on Annika Floria.
Getting that shine, and you want to take my shine? What I want to tell Terrence is this. Whoever loses this fight, they're going to say he was washed. If I beat him, they're going to say, oh, you beat a washed guy. He's been beat before. He's been lost. And if he beats me, they're going to say, oh, he's old. He's washed. Like, it does nothing for me to take this fight. But when I was explaining to Terrence, I'm like, we're homies, bro. Like, there's so many other people in this thing we could fight. Like, go build your wave somebody else. Go build your wave, you know?
Right.
So Terrence like, cool, I get it, bro. I'm not going to fight you. So I'm like, okay, cool. We're not going to fight each other. We're hanging out. I'm like, bro, come train with me. I drove to LA to go pick him up. I brought him a car. I brought some clothes. I'm like, man, I'm going to take care of you. I got you, bro. Come train with me. I'm going to show you something. And what I want to show him was the things I saw, the holes in his game. I'm like, I don't know if you know exactly what fighting is or if you're just fighting. There's a difference between the two. Everything I'm doing, I'm strategically thought about it before it actually happened. Or was I just out there swinging and I just hit a guy and it just worked,
Yeah.
So I'm trying to teach him something. All right, we leave. And a week later, he texted me again. He's like, they're offering me the fight. And he's trying to show me his manager and stuff. And it looks like, oh, they've been trying to hype this shit up for weeks. They've been working at this, trying to get me. And so I already told him, we don't fight the homies.
Yeah.
But now I feel like you're pressing me. I feel like you think I'm a bitch. You know what I mean? I feel like you think I'm an easy fighter, or you think this is a game, or I don't know what you think this shit is. But now I just think the answer no more after that. No more. No, we taking the fight. I didn't even tell you how much to take the fight. Like, oh no, we're gonna scrap now because now you playing with me and you think this is something else. It's like, bro, there's so many other people you could have did this with, but now you play with me. Let's go fight. You want to get cracking? We can get it cracking.
Inland Empire's own King Green get me all sorts of fired up.
Fuck yeah.
Danny,
is this awesome, dude.
Is this the perfect pay-per-view opener? Well, it's not pay-per-view. Is this the best main card opener possible, or dude, what?
It's awesome. It's awesome. I love it. I think it's great. And remember years ago when you and I were doing the MMA Hour at Fighting, I told you before Masvidal blew up, I'm like, I don't know why this guy isn't like as popular as Nate Diaz, right? Like, why is Masvidal not like a superstar? Like, the guy's a character. He's awesome. Dude, this Bobby Green. I think if the UFC would have, now it's a bit too late, obviously he's towards the end of his career, but I think if the UFC really would have gotten behind him, look at the way he talks. Like, you're just, I have to sit through so many interviews, Luke. And now, you know, I work for MMA Junkie, obviously award-winning, all that. But dude, it's just, it can get so boring, some of these interviews, but Bobby Green, he has a way with words. And dude, I think he would have been a massive superstar if the UFC really gotten behind him. And I said the same thing about Masvidal when he wasn't. So anyway, yeah, shouts out to Bobby Green. He's awesome. Also owner of a strip club. And then Terrence McKinney is a bad dude as well. He's scared of a second round. The guy just goes in there to kill or be killed. So this is awesome. And I love all the little drama. I hope it's real just for the sake of it. But then I also hope that, you know, they're able to shake hands after, because they look like they did have some sort of a good relationship or a good friendship. I don't know from what Bobby Green is saying. But, yeah, hopefully they're able to squash the beef.
What kind of fighter beats Terrence McKinney? And by that I mean, you know, you could just say generically, oh, really good ones. But is there something more to it than just that?
I think the style of Bobby Green, in a way, one that is able to capitalize on fighters' mistakes, that's able to think quickly, that's able to pick up on things. One that has a good and quick counter ability, but at the same time, one that's tough as shit and that's got a chin, because Terrence McKinney is a tornado, and odds are, even if you're skilled, you might not see some shit coming because of the speed, the craziness. You're going to get cracked. Do you have the chin or not to support that shot? And that's the questions that I have Bobby Green. Again, skill for skill, Bobby Green's the better fighter. And I can see him countering Terrence McKinney and putting him out. But his chin's a little bit questionable. And in that tornado of chaos, that's Terrence McKinney in that first round, 100% Green can't get caught. But, yeah, I would say counter ability, ability to, you know, make fighters pay for their mistakes, and toughness.
I'm going to say, I'll add one more to that, which is it's kind of in line with what you're saying, but somebody who can deal with early pressure in a fight, where, you know, they can kind of cover, they can be defensive, and they're not panicking. They got their wits about them. The only question I have about Bobby Green is not that he, you know, can he do that? Can he not do that? I think he can do that, generally speaking. And by the way, we didn't even mention the fact he's going to have his own custom shorts finally. But the other thing is, though, Danny, is he is older and a little bit slower, and a little bit more hittable, I think, than he once was. So I think stylistically, he's got the things he needs to beat McKinney. But I think the one thing that McKinney has really going for him, aside from, you know, what pressure does to people, but in this fight in particular, is that Green. You know, how old is Green? Is he 40? How old is Green? Long Island?
39.
39. You know, he's not a spring chicken anymore. This guy fought in fucking Strikeforce Challengers, you know what I mean, or something. I think he did. So, you know, to me, if there is a window for McKinney, who, you know, just fights until basically he just fizzles out, the fact that Green is older and a little slower and a little more susceptible makes this one to me a little bit more intriguing, I guess, the way I would put that.
Yeah, I mean, both are very vulnerable and both are very offensively dangerous, which makes for an awesome fight. I'm all for it.
All right, before we get to the prelim card, Long Island Luke, I want to say this. Let's do some DraftKings McGregor versus Holloway picks. So this is presented to you by DraftKings Sports. DraftKings, the crown is yours. DraftKings Sports is now available in all 50 states. Make sure to check it out this weekend and make your picks for fight night. What do we have here, Long Island? What should we be looking at? What do you got your eye on with some of these fights?
All right. Well, the first prop I want to bring up, Danny kind of alluded it to. Luke, you might have actually asked Danny earlier when we were talking about the McGregor fight, but is he gonna wrestle? I feel like he's gonna wrestle, dude. You just mentioned we saw the Max Oliveira fight. Max literally got controlled for 21 minutes. I don't think Conor's gonna be able to control him on the ground like that. This isn't the same fight 13 years ago. But I do think McGregor mentally is going to be like, I've already beaten this guy before. And how did I beat him? I took him down a bunch, 4 times to be exact. McGregor to get 1 takedown right now, over half a takedown, plus 300.
Wow.
I think
that's crazy.
Also, consider something. If he's at 170, he's got more bulk. He might like his chances to physically impose that on Holloway.
Exactly. And we're worried about his cardio. I'm not saying that wrestling is going to save your cardio, but leaning against him against the cage,
Yes.
leaning against him on top of, like, these are ways to save your breath a little bit. So I like that. The other thing I'm kind of interested in is the significant strikes per each fighter, not for the total fight, but Conor McGregor, total significant strikes over under 49.5. I feel like the under is like, I don't think this is going to be a back and forth war. And even if it is, it's not going to go longer than like 10 minutes if they're fucking scrapping back and forth. So I feel like 49.5 is, I would take the under there. You guys think he gets over that?
That's where the stats are important. Luke, I don't know if you can.
Okay, I got him. Here's Conor McGregor's stat line in terms of significant strikes landed, right? That's what we're talking about. In the Poirier third fight, 27. In the rematch, 29. In the Cerrone fight, 19, and in the Nurmagomedov fight, which obviously went into the 4th round, just 51. I would hammer the under on that one.
To that point, though, because I also have this pulled up in the second Nate Diaz fight, which did go 5 rounds, 100. Yeah, so It's like, all right, if this goes long, sure, but I don't think it's going to go long.
Yeah.
And then if we just look at the money line, like, I feel like getting Max at minus 225, that's pretty cheap, all things considered. I feel like Max should be like a minus 500 favorite here. I wouldn't bet on McGregor at plus 185. I'd bet on McGregor at like plus 300. So I think anything under, like, again, minus 500 for Max, throw that in a parlay. That feels solid to me. And we did talk about the over under the other day, but I want to just bring it up again, man. The under 2.5 at minus 120. It might be a little sweaty. Again, I said I think this fight goes no longer than 15 minutes. So that could hit the over 2.5, obviously. But, you're still getting those 12.5 minutes there. And I feel like the under is the way to go. Fight does not go the distance is minus 550 right now. I don't think this thing goes the distance. Maybe you'd rather.
Fight?
Huh?
For that fight? The main?
Or sorry, fight to go the distance. Wait, no, yeah. Fight to not go the distance is minus 550.
Wow.
Yeah, why? You think it's going to go?
Sounds right to me.
Yeah, that sounds right to
I
me.
know. I would expect the odds to be a little bit more favoring that,
Yeah,
like minus
right.
700. I don't know.
I mean, again, I think there's a lot of question marks around this fight, but I feel like those are the best props for the main event. One other thing I wanted to bring up, especially because we were just talking about that fight, dude, King Green as an underdog. I feel like any Terrence McKinney fight is 50-50. You're getting a more skilled fighter in King Green compared to Terrence's other opponents. I believe 5 of his 6 last wins came against guys no longer in the UFC. So it's like, all right, who's he really beaten? You got King Green here, who's like great defensively. I think if this goes longer than half a round, if it goes 2.5 minutes, I think Bobby Green's going to win it. He's just got to survive those first 2.5 minutes or put Terrence out in the meantime. But
do we have any data on how guys perform once they get custom shorts?
I don't know, Luke, because those are usually main event things. And then you have to factor in that, like, when Max got him, Dustin got him, and they were fighting each other,
right.
So like,
it's also kind of like an unscientific way to view it, but I was just going to kill it.
Gaff has a crazy theory on purple shorts that like anyone who's wearing purple shorts is going to lose. Like, especially if the first fight of the night is wearing purple.
Ian Gary wears purple shorts.
Yeah, but maybe he was the only purple fighter on that card. If the first purple fighter loses, all the rest of the purple, like Charles Johnson always wears purple. I'm just saying, man, shit happens. Yeah. But those are the bets I like on this card, guys. We kind of went over everything else, but yeah, I don't know how you guys are feeling.
All right, stick around. We appreciate that. And again, one more time, presented by DraftKings Sports. DraftKings, the crown is yours. DraftKings Sports is now available in all 50 states. Make sure to check it out this weekend and make your picks for Fight Night. Big thanks to our friends at DraftKings. All right, let's quickly talk about the prelim card, which has a ton of stuff on it. Danny, we don't have to spend all the time in the world on each of these, but I'd kind of like to go through them a little bit if we can. Robert Whittaker minus 135, Nikita Krylov plus 114. Obviously, Whittaker up at 205 this time. He flew all 6 of his children from Australia to Las Vegas. I saw someone say this. It didn't even occur to me until someone said it. They weren't declaring that this was going to happen, but what they said was they were getting retirement vibes. Bringing all of your kids over, you're on the prelim card. You're kind of, I don't know if he's at the end of his career or not, but there was something that they said that they kind of saw in this. How are you feeling about this new venture, or maybe a very quick venture, I should say, for Whittaker?
I didn't think about it until now. I kind of took it as a new chapter in his career. Not a very long one, but I can see him do 2 more fights after this at light heavyweight, should things go well. But now that you put it that way, it wouldn't be too crazy if he decides to retire and walk away from the sport in this fight, right? Flying out 6 kids. I mean, you fly out with 1, right? And 6 hours from DC to Colombia?
It's about 5, yeah. 5
okay.
5.
Well, imagine 6 in 20 hours or something?
Yeah, 14 probably.
14? Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do that, it's a big deal. So maybe he is retiring.
That's a lot of money, dude.
Yeah, that too.
I
think Robert Whittaker has probably made a pretty penny, right? No, maybe.
Definitely. I didn't think he was retiring, Luke, but now that you said that, at media day, he was saying things like, he's never going back down to 85, which I'm thinking, he's going to lose this fight, probably just go right back down to 85. And B, he said, they were like, aren't you worried? Carlos Olberg is the champ. You're training with all these CKB guys now. And he's like, nah, I ain't worried about that.
Yeah.
But and he said, I won't fight people I eat with or something. Like, Carlos Olberg isn't even on his radar. Granted, I know he's far away from a title shot, but that does allude to I'm never even going to get there because this might be it. Yeah.
He also might think Olberg is not going to hold that belt for very long too.
That's also a good point.
Krylov, he's up, he's down. He's got skills, but he's vulnerable too. I think Whittaker's ceiling has obviously been much fucking higher, but who knows? At 205, what this is going to look like, right? Yeah. I don't even know what to say. Gable Steveson at almost minus 3,000 favorite versus Elisha Ellison, whose fights I watched in preview of today's show. I mean, I don't even know what to say, right? This is about the easiest fight they can give Steveson, right? What else? It's a tune-up, or it's a get your feet wet kind of venture, right?
Yeah, it's pretty clear what the UFC is trying to do. I will say this to kind of just play devil's advocate here for a second, but Elisha Ellison specifically for this fight sought out Javier Torres, who I interviewed over in my channel. Javier Torres is Waldo Cortez Acosta's head coach. He also trains Tyrell Fortune and has a bunch of heavyweights in his gym over in Arizona. So I would say this, in terms of preparation, I do think he did the best decision moving from Washington to Arizona. Because look, Waldo's killing it. Great with slick boxing. And Tyrell Fortune, sure, he didn't win an Olympic gold medal in wrestling, but he still, did pretty well in college. I believe he even represented the U.S. at some point, I think, or at least was in the trials, and obviously a UFC fighter, knows about MMA as well. I do think in terms of his preparation, he ticked all the boxes. He checked all the boxes, and he's as ready as he can be to face fucking Gable Steveson, who's obviously a fucking stud, and very promising fighter. So I'll just leave you guys with that.
Also, the other fighter on this card with a checkered past outside of the main event.
Yeah.
All right. This is the one to me that is interesting. Cody Garbrandt plus 330 taking on Adrian Yanez at minus 425. Now, listen to me on this one. I thought Yanez got robbed against Simon. I thought he beat him, Danny. It ended up being a draw. And Yanez obviously has had some ups. He's had some downs. 32 years of age. Garbrandt, 35 years of age. Garbrandt putting together that, wins where he can get them, I think is the way I would put that. I don't mind Yanez being the favorite here, but at minus 425, it feels a little strong.
It feels a little strong because Yanez has he can struggle with some fighters, and even the expectations that we had for his career haven't panned out. He's kind of fallen short to them, to be honest. And at 32, I don't know if he's able to surpass him. But if you remember at some point before his run that he's in, which is a draw, a loss, a win, and 2 other losses. Before that, when he was on that run, like people are saying this guy had the best boxing in the UFC, bound to fight for a title, and obviously that did not happen. Cody Garbrandt is a tough guy to fight. Like he might not be in his prime, but he's got good movement. The speed is still there. Boxing is still there. So yeah, I agree. This fight's a lot closer. And look, I would even take it a step further because I don't think Garbrandt at all finishes Adrian Yanez. So if you want more bang for your buck, just go Garbrandt decision. I don't think that's crazy.
The next one could be actually a bit of a surprising banger. Luke Riley, who's undefeated at -265, taking on Kai Kamaka III. Kai Kamaka III, one of Eric Nixick's guys, who to me is very experienced and, not necessarily the best fighter in that weight class, but well-trained, pretty well-rounded, very experienced. The thing is, Danny, Luke Riley looks like he's got a lot of upside, a lot of slick ability. It's hard for me to see exactly. Kamaka has got a lot of experience against really tough guys in tough contexts, and I think that will serve him well in this fight and every other one. But it's not clear to me what Kamaka has over Riley as like a dominating factor.
I see it completely different, man. And I'm
Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Kamaka's winning by decision. It's gonna come off like I'm such a hater of the whole Paddy Pimblett gym because they train together. And trust me, it's not that they got the same hair. I don't see the hype in Luke Riley. Like against who was it? His last fight against
Michael Aswell.
Michael Aswell kind of put it on him, man. And he has a lot of the same issues that Paddy Pimblett has that leaves his chin wide open, doesn't have great movement. I do think he has better striking than Paddy, has good jiu-jitsu. But all in all, like I think he's kind of a bit overvalued, to be honest. Kai Kamaka trains with Eric Nixick. Kai Kamaka is very, very good, slick boxing, powerful. He's going to be a way bigger and more of a physical presence in this bout. I'm calling it 29-28. Kamaka wins a decision.
Wow.
Upset.
All right. I love it.
Now.
I love it.
I'm not impressed by Luke.
Well, we got a couple Lukes on the show, so be nice. All right.
Well, kind of just general, what I'm saying. But I'm not impressed by Luke Riley, to be specific.
All right. The Brian Campbell special is next. Tracy Cortez taking on Wang Tong.
Oh, yeah.
Danny, it's a straight up pick, a -110 in either direction. Who's going to get it done?
Dude, I'm going to go with Tracy. But this is a 50-50. It can go either way. Wang Tong is good, but she's kind of got this rep of being like this crazy knockout artist, and certainly in the regional scene she was. But in the UFC, her knockout ability has not really been there. Tracy Cortez has never been knocked out. Tracy, even though her record is 1-2 in her last 3 fights, I think she's made a ton of improvement. She's actually got a decent jab now, decent striking. She's tough. She's got wrestling. I think just sometimes poor decision-making has cost her in fights, like more like fighter IQ. But skill-wise, I think she's improved a ton. And she left. I talked to her last week in English and this week in Spanish. She left Fight Ready. She's no longer with them, and she moved to Mexico City, and she's training out of the PI in Mexico City at elevation. So expect her cardio to be crazy. I think she closes the distance, survives some maybe dicey striking exchanges, takes down or controls Wang Tong against the cage, and takes a decision.
I'll say this. I agree with most of that analysis. The only issue for me about Cortez is not really cardio at all, but her offensive identity tends to fade down the stretch. She just tends to lose herself a little bit as the fight goes on. And so that gives me pause. That's the part where I'm like, let's see if she can tighten that up. But that one should be fun for as long as it lasts. Now we have the Long Island Luke special. Damian Penis is back.
Dicks everywhere. Dicks.
At -238, taking on Cesar Almeida at +195. Long Island Luke, how do you see this one?
Penis is a finisher, straight up. He's gonna finish, and he's big in there.
Penis.
He's hard. I don't personally like take Penis, but I root for Penis. I'm a big Penis supporter. So yeah, I'll be rooting for Damian Penis this weekend. Let's go,
bro. You gotta have a Wang and Penis parlay.
Oh yeah.
I already, the male parlay, I called it the Wang and Penis parlay, and yeah, we can get to a different one off air that I won't bring up right now, but yeah.
I'm really not sure what to say about the rest of these, Danny. Farid Basharat on the last fight of his contract at -600, taking on John Garza plus 440. Basharat just much better. Not a finisher, not a dynamic finisher in that sense. Both Basharat brothers are good, although his other brother Javid is, I think, with PFL now.
Yeah.
But Farid, very, very good. Really, really talented, well-rounded fighter. I'm not expecting him to lose here.
No, yeah, he should win and he should get a finish here. He is the truth, and I think he's going to be, a player at 135 for sure.
Alessandro Costa minus 245, taking on Cody Durden at, I think, plus 200, or maybe the odds are wrong here. I can't quite tell. I would fade Durden, but the other one that's kind of on my radar here, Danny, Ryan Gondra taking on Zachary Reese. This one's close, minus 130 for Gondra. Yeah. Reese at plus 110. You got a vibe on this one? You got a feeling?
I think Gondra knockout. I do think he's got power. He's proven that, and I think Zachary Reese sometimes kind of hesitates a little bit in certain sequences. Like he kind of pauses a little bit and gets cracked. I think Gondra can put him away, but I also haven't seen a ton of Gondra. He's still undefeated, right? Or is he 9-1?
I don't have his record in front of me.
We haven't seen
he's
much
got
of
one
him.
loss.
Yeah.
Okay, one loss. I can see a world with Zachary can take him down. He's got some jits. Maybe he can sub him, but I expect your knockout from Gondra, I think.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your card. UFC 329 starts at 9 p.m. in the East on Paramount Plus, exclusively on Paramount Plus. There were some questions, Danny, about whether they were going to put this on CBS in any capacity. They are not. They're going to put the whole thing on Paramount Plus. So we'll see ultimately how this goes. So, Danny, from the legendary MMA Junkie fame and family, what is your particular coverage plan for today, tomorrow, and the weekend?
So I'm technically off today and tomorrow, but I'll be working the fights from home digitally on Saturday. I'll be doing over a play-by-play over there and writing some post-fight stories from the press conference and stuff like that. But this week I got a couple more interviews, which I will not give out names yet because one of them is actually quite special for me, and I don't want to give out a name until I finally have it recorded. But you can expect a couple more interviews from me on the English side. I did speak to Tracy Cortez in English and Spanish, Javier Torres, Elisha Ellison's coach, who's fighting Gable Stevenson, and then doing a bunch of stuff over at Hablemos MMA as well in Spanish. So staying busy on my days off.
Long Island, what you got?
I got a new prop quiz dropping tomorrow at 1:30. It is, who is it? Aaron Bronstetter and Mike Heck. Winner gets $100. Tournament finale. So tune into that. It's a good one. And then Saturday, you already know, full card watch along. I'll be going live 15 minutes early. So 4:45 Eastern. And Luke, I know you're not doing a watch along. So everyone, you already know, main card minute, come join. Thank you.
Yes. I will be flying home on Saturday. There's a possibility I could be home in time for the main event, but I just don't want to count on it, so I'm not doing it. However, what I will have is 1 p.m. on Sunday. In fact, the post is already up on my YouTube channel. 1 p.m. East Coast time on Sunday, I'm going to have my my post-fight show. All right? So we're going to react to everything there, questions, analysis, the whole 9 yards. So technically, I do it on Sundays anyway. It's usually at 1 a.m. This time it'll be at 1 p.m. on Sundays, but I'm back. Vacation will be over, and then by Monday, we're going to have a full reaction with Chuck Mindenhall and the whole 9 yards. Let's remind everyone, if you want to get merch, morningkombat.shop. These are going to only be available until the end of this month. 20% off literally every design we've had this year. They're all going to be available, 20% off. And again, if you want to get posters, those are going to be 50% off at morningkombat.shop. If you want to reach the show, morningkombat@gmail.com. That's for fan subs. That's for Dead Wrong. And just to reach out, we'll get back to that on Monday and then next Friday's show as well. And then, of course, please become a member. Badges, emojis, and more to come. It really helps support the channel, and we appreciate everybody who does. Guys, take care of yourselves this weekend. Have a great time. Enjoy the fights. I'll talk to you guys this weekend. We'll be back here on Monday with Chuck Mindenhall, as I mentioned. Danny, thank you so much. So for Denis Segura, and congratulations to him and the whole MMA Junkie team, for Long Island Luke and everyone else here on the show, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you all later, and until then, may all of your gains be loyal.